Chapter 41. Superman asks to fight. What is the idea? Natasha startled. Leon was already packing up the tools on the workbench, preparing to make another batch of inhibitors. How about this? I help you take down the Red Room, and you and your team switch sides and work with me. Who could refuse a group of female agents with exceptional skills, piloting, cooking, global operations? I get a squad of top agents. You get to destroy the Red Room. The other widows can be freed from control and find new lives. It's a win-win-win. Leon's proposal was practical as well as generous. If the Red Room fell, he'd not only achieve his goal, but also gain a loyal team. He'd win twice. So what do you think? He spoke casually, but his hands never stopped. They moved over the workbench in a blur, every motion precise, every milliliter of reagent measured to perfection. Natasha watched, impressed. How will you take down the Red Room? For some reason, she didn't doubt him. Deep down, she felt if Leon was willing, he could destroy the thing that had haunted her for so long. So you agree? Leon asked without looking up. Natasha was quiet for a few seconds. I agree. Once the Red Room is gone, I'll work with you to convince the other widows to join. I can't promise they'll all agree, she added, but as for me, I'm yours now. Her bluntness made Leon pause mid-motion. Are you serious? He turned, surprised. Aren't you going to ask what I'll expect in return? Natasha's trust was inexplicable. Normally, she would have weighed everything carefully, made sure she couldn't be forced into anything immoral. Leon had to admit she'd handled it well. Natasha shook her head. Trust me, if you can destroy the Red Room, the widows will follow. As for me, I owe you my life. She leaned on the table, looking him in the eye. Whatever you ask, I'll do. If I can't, then I'll repay you with my life. Her breath brushed his face. The look in her eyes was a quiet, powerful surrender, equal parts promise and challenge. Even Leon, hearing such absolute trust, might have felt moved. But this time, something else interrupted him. Oh, your smell! Don't get so close. I meant to say earlier, you can use the bathroom in my room upstairs. Now go wash up. Leon pinched his nose and stepped back, trying not to grimace. He had suppressed some of his superhuman sense of smell, but up close, he could still detect the faint stench of sewage clinging to Natasha. My smell? Natasha froze, stunned. Leon didn't explain. He motioned to Daida. Daida, show her out. No coming back until she's clean. She's no use here while I'm making inhibitors. The robotic Daida rolled forward obediently, using an arm to steer Natasha toward the stairs. Natasha remained dazed until she reached the bathroom in Leon's room. It was the first time someone had told her she smelled bad while she was trying to be alluring. Do I really smell that bad? She asked, sniffing her armpit. No, the deodorant masked it. She peeled off her combat suit and tapped the wall panel to run hot water. The bath was almost luxurious by widow standards. It feels so good. Maybe Leon actually cares, she mused, a smile tugging at her lips. So he's a tsundere little brother after all. He does look only 17 or 18. An hour and a half later, they met again in the living room. The sun had set. The mansion glowed in amber light, long shadows stretching across the floor. Natasha wore her black combat suit again, cleaned and dried by the smart washer. Leon had finished preparing the inhibitors and placed the box on the floor. Natasha wasn't tall, but she was in peak form, curvy, well-proportioned, unmistakably feminine. What struck Leon most were her eyes, amber and expressive, every look holding 1,000 things. He thought he understood why she never wore a mask on missions. Those eyes would give her away anywhere. Ready. So what's the plan? She asked. It sounds like you want to hit the Red Room right away. Natasha eyed Leon's trench coat. Why are you wearing a trench coat? Is your Iron Man armor under that? Wait, did I just guess right? Leon grinned. As Tony Stark's brother, an armor suit was hardly surprising. Are you wearing it, ready to take me straight to the Red Room? Natasha asked, a mix of excitement and apprehension. To the Red Room, the Iron Man tech was horrifyingly valuable, but the suit itself was essentially a flight squadron. The organization had plenty of those. Shouldn't we make a plan first? She urged. Plan? Leon set the inhibitor box down. Plan is, find the Red Room and eliminate everyone in it. He pulled at his trench coat collar. But you were part right. What do you mean? He tore open his collar and casually tossed the coat onto the sofa, revealing the S-shaped crest on his chest. Natasha couldn't help herself. She burst out, half shout, half laugh. Her surprise turned into delight, like a child whose impossible wish had come true. "Are you really Superman?" she asked again, hardly believing it. "Of course." Leon spread his arms. Natasha stepped forward and pressed her hand to his chest, feeling the hard, sculpted muscles beneath. "My God, it's like a Greek statue," she gushed. "No wonder you're so strong. No wonder your chest looks like that." Now it all made sense to her. As a top Red Room agent, she'd seen the news, this global icon, famed for incredible strength and power. If he was here, the Red Room would be trivial to topple. She felt she'd made the right call coming to Stark Mansion. "Cough, that's enough touching. Are you ready? If so, let's go." Leon cleared his throat and interrupted her inspection. Natasha stepped back, trying to look serious. "Let's go." Evening sunlight streamed through the French doors, falling on Leon and stretching his shadow across the room. In Natasha's eyes, he was haloed by that golden light, larger than life and ready to fight. Chapter 42, Red House. The high-altitude wind whipped Natasha's red hair, but it didn't make her cold. She gripped Leon's hand tightly and stared down at the pinprick lights below. "This is insane. You just flew me up like this." She reached out and brushed a cloud. Mist slipped coolly through her fingers. At Stark Mansion, after Leon checked that she was ready, he took her hand and shot into the sky, ripping through the clouds. The acceleration broke the sound barrier in an instant. Even Natasha, who had endured 24 years of brutal training, flown the fastest fighters, and disguised herself as the most extravagant aristocrats, couldn't help shrieking in surprise. She had seen much of the world, but never a supersonic flight with nothing between her and the air. "How are we breathing normally 1,000 meters up? Why isn't the wind shredding us?" she shouted, eyes wide at the new sensations. "I put up a biofield," Leon said without elaboration. He glanced up. "We're too low. If we speed up here, we'll affect the environment. We need to go higher." "How high?" Natasha snapped. "You'll see." Leon accelerated again, and the two climbed. Natasha's fear quickly turned into exhilaration. As they tore through cloud banks and into strong winds, she whooped like someone on a roller coaster. They kept climbing into the stratosphere. Now the moon had risen. Its light washed across a layered sea of clouds, turning the undersides a pale white against the dark vault of the stratosphere. Natasha looked down at the endless white, an ocean stretching away without reference points. She thought of the jets she'd flown. In them, satellites and instruments always gave her fix and direction. Naked in the sky like this, there was no navigation. "Leon, do you know where you're going?" she yelled. He gave her a strange look. "Of course I know. Do you want to start giving me directions to the Red Room?" Natasha blinked. Another angle hit her. "Wait, if I don't even know where the Red Room is, can you actually find it? You were trained there, controlled, then sent on missions, yet you don't know where it's located?" Leon's expression darkened with something like disbelief. "It's an espionage program from the 90s. The Red Room is deliberately off the map," she said. "They kept everything secret. Girls were raised and controlled from childhood to keep it running. Whenever we came back from a mission, they'd sedate us. I never learned the location." "But someone must know." Natasha thought of Alexei, the man who had stood in as her adoptive father, the second-generation Red Guardian in their world. "My adoptive father. He must know. Let's go find him." "No," Leon cut her off. "It's better if you reunite with your parents once you're free. It's not something to bring someone into the middle of before you can speak for yourself." Finding the Red Room wasn't going to be hard for Leon. Natasha's adoptive father, Alexei, had mostly been comic relief in her life. He offered a home for Natasha and Yelena, but nothing more. He knew nothing of the Red Room's secrets. "So how will you find it? Jarvis?" she asked, half teasing. "No, my eyes and ears." Leon's gaze had already scanned half the globe and locked onto the target. Natasha's jaw dropped. "You have super hearing and supervision too?" "You thought I was Superman when you first saw me in the costume, didn't you?" Leon said. "A lot of people make that guess. It's incredible, so most people don't want to believe it." Natasha examined him anew. "So you really are like Superman. Are you Kryptonian? Or did Stark experiment on you? The Starks worked on super soldier serums before. Maybe there's a connection." "Your theories range from plausible to wildly off the mark," Leon said. "You'll find out in time." His ears twitched, his face sharpened. Hold tight. I just heard your handler yelling at the red room that he can't reach you. We need to put some distance on this. Planning to get me back before he finishes throwing a fit? Natasha laughed. He'll thank you. That'll be even better, Leon said with a grin, then pushed the throttle. The biofield held. Air pressure that could slice metal smoothed into something like a spring breeze against Natasha's skin. For a moment, she felt like she was in VR, watching the flight profile of an ICBM. God, this is amazing, she breathed. They pushed past Mach 50, covering tens of kilometers a second. Up here, there were only thin air and clouds, no landmarks. Natasha noticed the North Star sliding toward the zenith of the sky. Are we heading for the North Pole? Is the Red Room inside the Arctic Circle? More or less, Leon answered. It's above the Arctic Ocean. We're close. He eased off and began a controlled descent. Natasha's excitement thinned into something sharper as they neared the clouds that hid the place she had never fully seen. The Red Room had been a high, invisible wall in her memory, an isolating force that had shaped her life. Now she was going to see it, and Leon, this almost divine soldier, was the hand guiding her. With someone like him, the Red Room would have no defense. Today might be the day her past finally ended, but the closeness of that ending made her uneasy. Vengeance and overthrowing the Red Room had been missions, goals she'd pursued with the deadly focus of a trained operative, even if it meant dying. Now, as the mission's completion neared, a new void opened. What would her life be once the debt was settled and the cages were broken? She had been a tool so long, freedom was both thrilling and terrifying. She imagined a world with sunlight warm on her face and summer grass beneath her feet, things she had never allowed herself to hope for. Yet her eyes, long unaccustomed to bright days, felt fragile at the thought, and her hands, the hands that had been stained and trained to hurt, hesitated at the idea of touching something so ordinary as green grass. As they sliced toward the hidden bastion over the Arctic, Natasha tightened her grip on Leon's hand. Fear, relief, and a trembling kind of hope wound together inside her, each as real as the wind that carried them forward. Chapter 43, No Man's Land. There it is, we've arrived. Leon's voice pulled Natasha from her thoughts. She looked up as clouds and mist swept past them. Thick, dark night clouds rolled in layers, swallowing the sky. For a moment, all she could see were black shapes rushing by. Leon moved so fast and so subtly, it was as if he had become part of the clouds themselves. Then the mist thinned. Natasha tightened her gaze. First, a steel runway several hundred meters long tore through the cloud bank. Then a colossal structure connected to the runway emerged. The black sky was suddenly lit from within. It was an aerial fortress, an aircraft carrier fused to a tower, 3 tiers high, each tier with 4 fighter runways, 12 in all. Lights from the fortress painted the surrounding clouds. Hidden up there, it was a forgotten pearl. So this is the Red Room, Natasha said, dazed, the glare of the fortress reflecting in her eyes. Leon hovered and took the whole thing in. Impressive, he said, but it looks like its anti-gravity system is just a few giant fans. What a primitive, futuristic mashup. The designer must be a mad genius. And with no real energy shielding, it's practically a sitting duck. He smirked. Tony would love this. Steel, loud aesthetics, totally impractical. That's his style. Natasha's rising emotions were interrupted by his teasing. She looked at him, speechless. You really know your brother. Of course, which is why I'm changing the plan. Leon rose higher to survey the fortress. This thing can't be destroyed outright, but if you strip it down right, it would make a hell of a 40th birthday present for him. You give birthday presents like that? Natasha dryly pictured mountains of cash. Other rich kids trade cars and yachts. You two trade aerial fortresses and, what did you say? A Universe spaceship? Yeah, he gave me a Universe-class ship for my 18th. Leon shrugged. So I can't show up empty-handed. She leaned back as if struck by the size of that joke. You brothers are something else. Enough. Leon took a few seconds to mark positions. He dropped toward the highest runway and landed like a whisper. Take these and follow me. He handed Natasha a box. These are inhibitors. I'll put everyone down. You move in, give the inhibitors to any widows, and finish off the rest with a quick strike. Any questions? None, Natasha said. She knew her role, support and cover. That was enough. I'll wait for you in the central control room." Leon shot up again. Neon lights from the runway washed half his body in red. He ascended until the fortress noticed him. Alarms screamed. Deck soldiers rushed to positions, weapons tracking him. Natasha looked for an opening to help. Before she could move, Leon, targeted by red laser sights from numerous guns, acted. For an instant, a blur wrapped the fortress in concentric afterimages. Natasha squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them, the lines were gone. Leon stood where he had been, and the red targeting dots flickered out. "I'm going in," he called. "Don't keep me waiting." He surged forward like an arrow. Then the deck erupted in the sound of bodies hitting the ground. Natasha's eyes widened. In front of the fortress entrance, combat personnel lay stacked and unconscious. In the space of a heartbeat, Leon had incapacitated dozens and stacked them before her. Oh my God. Natasha felt both stunned and strangely calm. Leon's speed had made all the combat work unnecessary for her. Her job was surgical and simple. Give inhibitors to every widow, known or unknown, and shoot the other soldiers in the head. In the Red Room, there were only two kinds of people, controllers and the controlled. Anyone who wasn't a widow was a cog in the system, an enforcer, an oppressor. They didn't need to be identified. Natasha moved, left hand finishing them, right hand administering inhibitors, and cleared a path toward the command center. Inside the fortress, the grand exterior dissolved into familiar clinical halls. Everything smelled faintly of metal and disinfectant. Passageways she knew well stretched out. The only difference was that every doorway and deck was strewn with unconscious bodies. They lay with peaceful faces, no visible wounds, like people who had simply fallen asleep. Leon had moved through this place as if it were empty, and she followed in his wake. The widows would be out for a long time after his blows, so she couldn't linger. Even so, there were a lot of them. It took nearly 10 minutes to dart from room to room, injecting inhibitors and dispatching guards before she reached the central command. Voices leaked through the door before she pushed it open. "I apologize, Superman. Forgive my presumption. Please believe me. I had no idea of your ties to Mr. Tony Stark." Dreykov's voice was smooth, pleading. "Spare me the sermon," Leon snapped. "I've heard your long-winded theories about widows keeping the world safe. Don't try that now." "Then what do you want me to say? I'll say anything. Want me to tell you about Gorbachev's?" "Enough." Leon's voice cut through him. "You already know my relationship with Tony. Do you still think you'll walk away from this?" There was a brief silence, then a harsh bark of laughter. "Ha ha ha! Superman, you fell for it. I've been stalling. The pheromones I emit control anyone nearby, rendering them unable to attack. You've already inhaled a large dose. Try to hit me now if you like." Natasha pushed the door open. Her old superior, General Dreykov, sat slumped over a table. His hair was neat, his glasses perched on his nose, his short, stout body in a suit. He faced Leon across the table and laughed, a thin, mocking sound. "It looks like I arrived at a bad time." Natasha nodded toward the two people in the room as she stepped inside. "Natasha, you brought Superman here. You damned smack!" Dreykov erupted with curses the moment he saw her, but he didn't finish his tirade. Leon slapped the back of his head. Dreykov's skull hit the table, and his brains splattered across the surface. Leon muttered, "This guy talks too much. It's unbearable. Hypocrite to boot. Makes you want to smack him." He wiped Dreykov's blood from the man's ruined clothes, then tilted his head at Natasha. "You don't mind if I finish him off, do you?" Natasha shrugged. "I've wanted to for a long time." He was talking about pheromones. Leon took a step closer. "Those pheromones make people unable to attack him. We all felt it. Why weren't you affected?" Leon seized Dreykov by the collar, threw him to the floor, and his eyes flared. A beam of heat burned through the mastermind, turning the man to ash in an instant. "Abnormal pheromones wouldn't last a second in me," he said, flicking imaginary dust off his hands. "How could they affect me? He was just imagining things." "Unless it was mental or magical control. But try to control a Kryptonian who's been basking in the sun for over half a year. That level of influence wouldn't cut it." Natasha stared at the ash on the floor and let out a small, surprised sound. "Heat vision, huh? Another one of your amazing abilities." "I'm almost getting used to being surprised by what you reveal," Leon replied. "You little treasure," she teased. "What will you surprise me with next?" He smiled back silently. But before any surprises, tell me how you want to repay me. I'll agree to anything. Natasha, your tone right now is like a 30-year-old career woman hitting a bar after work to look for a handsome model to have fun with, Leon said, amused. A large screen dominated one wall of the room. In front of it was a desk with an embedded control panel. Leon walked over and tried to operate it. If you want to repay me, first let the widows switch sides and work for me. But the first step is to lift the control the Red Room has over the widows worldwide. Gladly. Natasha stood beside him, watching. I'll go check on the widows on the carriers. Crack the system and find the Red Room's list of widows around the world. That part I'll leave to you, all right? That's simple. As Leon's words faded, the screen flashed a red interface asking for palm print recognition. Palm print recognition? Leon tried several ways to bypass it and failed. I may have been a little impulsive. Dreykov should have been disposed of later. He pulled out his phone. But I've got Jarvis. He can handle this. He connected the phone to the control panel. Jarvis's voice filled the room. Young Master Leon, Mr. Stark asked me to inquire whether you're coming home tonight. Leon's face darkened. No, tell him not to mess around while I'm out. If he's lax tomorrow, I'll have Pepper give him a talking to. I will relay your message to Mr. Stark, Jarvis replied, then added. He also asked me to tell you that if you aren't coming home at night, take precautions. Be careful not to be tricked by bad people. Leon slapped his own forehead. He should worry about himself first. That old man is childish, still thinks I'm a kid. Please, I was more mature than him at 3. Pfft, cough, cough, Natasha snorted beside him. Leon shot her a lethal look. She tucked a strand of red hair behind her ear and glanced away. Next time I'll introduce you to that childish Stark. You'll find him especially boring. Leon pouted. He turned back to the console and prepared to let Jarvis start cracking the Red Room's system. Natasha reached out and poked his cheek with a fingertip, then quickly withdrew it. She backed toward the doorway, gave him a quick wave without looking, and said, One childish Stark is enough for me, to be honest. She slipped out and vanished around the corner. Leon blinked. Another childish person? A moment later, Jarvis, who had been silent, spoke up. Congratulations, young Master Leon. Congratulations on what? Leon asked. Congratulations on finding your 4th girlfriend. Jarvis answered without a beat. Your previous 3 girlfriends only dated you for half a month before breaking up with you, after receiving a check from Mr. Stark. I hope this time you can have a long-lasting relationship. The jab hit a nerve. Leon's expression tightened. Isn't that because Tony always thinks women are after my money? He insists feelings should stay physical. Every time I get close to someone, he whips out a check. Every time you just get a girlfriend, the girls only spend a few nights with you, and then he offers a check. Jarvis insisted, taking Tony's side more strongly than usual. Mr. Stark's just doing what Miss Potts usually does for him. Leon sulked. It's always $1 million check. Who wouldn't walk away for that? So are you going to stop Mr. Stark from paying breakup fees this time? Jarvis asked. No need, Leon said. Natasha and I were never meant to be together. He glanced toward the corner where Natasha had been hiding and eavesdropping. She was still just outside the door. But your relationship seemed to be going well, Jarvis observed, unable to parse human complexity. Leon shook his head. It's different. From the start, I understood what Natasha needs is a sense of belonging. He explained slowly. She grew up in tragedy. Her adoptive parents were undercover agents pretending to be a family. So-called family love was an illusion. When that disguised family fell apart, she was sent to the Red Room. The brutal training and her life as an assassin left her without an identity. She's like duckweed drifting on a vast sea with no fixed home. What she lacks most is a tidal flat where she can settle and put down roots. On that tidal flat, she doesn't need a lover so much as other pieces of duckweed, company, a family with siblings, a place, not a person, that gives her belonging. So we won't be together. Leon closed his eyes. He knew Natasha's past and her likely future. She would have people she loved and friends she was close to, but she would keep a measured distance from everyone. That detachment was both her armor and her refuge. Thud. Something fell outside, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps fading away. Natasha, having heard what he'd said, had fled in embarrassment. You were right here a moment ago, Miss Natasha, Jarvis reminded him. I know, Leon said softly. You understand her very well. Do you like her but are afraid to get close? Jarvis asked. My Jarvis, only Tony would behave like that. I admire Natasha. That's it. Leon's voice was steady. So I don't plan to be with her. My relationship with her can be simpler, staying up late to talk about thoughts and ideas. According to Mr. Stark's behavioral logic analysis, thoughts discussed at night will turn into noise-making activities. That is the logic. Chapter 45, Incorporation in Progress. Enough chatter, Jarvis. Now infiltrate their host and unlock the system, Leon ordered. Understood, young Master Leon. Jarvis's program slipped into the Red Room's host with surgical precision. The crimson password box on the main display was quickly drowned by a cascade of blue code. Streams of zeros and ones flickered across the screen. Inside that system, Jarvis operated with unprecedented power. Young Master Leon, it reported, this host feels like open ocean. Its performance is excellent. You can enjoy it more later. I'm planning to hand this fortress over to Tony. You can be stationed here permanently, Leon said, watching the screen for the results. More than 10 minutes passed. Then, in a flash of light, the lock disengaged. Folders popped open in order of clearance from low-security files up to highly privileged documents. Leon allowed himself a satisfied smile. Jarvis, search this system for key data and pull up everything on Red Room Widow operatives. Jarvis began a rapid scan and analysis of the repository. A moment later, it chimed. Young Master Leon, all corresponding data has been located. A file opened on the big screen. Dense rows of avatar photos filled it, scrolling steadily to reveal more portraits. At least 300 widows, Leon murmured. Mark their locations on the world map. The display shifted to a globe, pins appearing across continents. London and Paris in Northern Europe, Cape Town and Johannesburg in Southern Africa, Jerusalem, and the supposedly free and open cities of Chicago and New York. Over 300 widow operatives were scattered around the world, some occupying high positions, some masters of social maneuvering, others hidden in commerce like concealed blades. The Red Room had controlled the globe through them. Jarvis, send a copy of the list and the detailed files to Natasha and transfer $100 million from my account to her so she can set up a new organizational center in New York. Leon's gaze sharpened. Young Master Leon, Jarvis replied, you may want to tell Miss Romanoff directly about these arrangements. They're coming to see you. They? Leon asked, just as a faint rustle of footsteps reached his ears. Deliberate, silent footsteps, the sort of controlled tread the widows had been trained in. Oh my God, what did I just hear? A man is going to spend $100 million on you. Natasha, how did you do it? Did you seduce him? Teach me so I can get that much too. We'll need a lot of money in the future, right? The first to enter was Natasha. Behind her came a girl whispering in rapid Russian, clearly unaware that Leon not only understood the language, but had heard every remark. Natasha ignored her and walked straight to Leon, 40-odd widow operatives trailing behind. Their hair ranged from gold to black to a deep royal purple, their eyes from steel blue to dark brown. They all looked at Leon in his uniform, faces still edged with confusion and sorrow, but their eyes shining with gratitude and something like reverence. It was plain Natasha had already explained the general situation. I brought everyone, Natasha said, stepping aside to make room. Her tone was its usual dry calm, as if she hadn't heard the whispered commentary. They're all willing to join your organization to serve you. Leon glanced between Natasha and the girl at her side. It looks like you had a hard time persuading them. Natasha sighed. This is my sister, Yelena. She tugged the girl forward like a reluctant passenger. She attacked me as soon as she woke up. She's impulsive. Both sisters showed signs of struggle, one with a bruised forehead, the other with the corner of her mouth torn. That wasn't just impulsiveness, one of the widows snarled. It was punishment for your betrayal. Your defection led to even harsher control for the rest of us. Yelena had short, neat blonde hair and a sharp, youthful face. She looked younger than Leon. She bristled at the accusation, then snapped to attention before Leon. Thank you for saving us, Superman. We are willing to follow your orders. Leon smiled, about to offer a few words to win them over, when Yelena pivoted and whispered in Russian to Natasha, loud enough for both of them to hear. "Oh my God, his chest is amazing. Bigger than mine. Have you touched it? It's a waste such a handsome man was seduced by you." Both Natasha's and Leon's faces went dark. Before Natasha could take care of her rebellious sister, Leon stepped forward and addressed the widows in Russian, his voice even and authoritative. "Ladies, I won't waste time introducing myself. You should all be familiar with the names Superman and Stark." He paused to make sure he had their attention. "First, I want to be clear. Although I helped Natasha destroy the Red Room, part of my purpose was to bring your strength into a new framework. But this is not compulsory. You've already suffered enough. If you don't want to join, you're free to go, return to an ordinary life, or use your skills in the world however you choose. And those who are willing to join, stay. I'll have Natasha establish a public company or organization in New York where you can put your talents to use. That's all I have to say. Those who don't wish to join can leave after helping clear the bodies in the fortress. Natasha will see you to safe passage. Oh, and I'll have Jarvis send your original family information to you." Leon gestured toward the screen. "Jarvis." "Understood, young master. All information has been sent," the system confirmed. Jarvis was efficient. Every communication device among the Widow operatives received the files. The women glanced at one another, but didn't immediately open them. For these girls, who had been taken to the Red Room as children, the idea of family was a distant, almost foreign concept. Like a bakery they might pass on the street without ever going in. They had spent more than a decade without making a real decision for themselves. Every detail of their lives had been planned by the Red Room, even the way they would die. Now, presented with two stark choices by Leon, a subtle excitement mixed with their caution. After a brief, silent moment, they stepped forward together and formed a tight semicircle around him. "We are willing to obey your commands, sir," they said, voices uneven but unanimous. Leon's tall figure stood out against their black uniforms like a beacon among stars. He let his gaze pass over each tense face and smiled. "Then welcome to the team." He opened his hands. "From now on, we will do many great things together, things the world will admire. You will never regret today's decision. Your first task is to clear the aerial fortress and dispose of all the bodies. After that, Natasha and I will go to different parts of the world to free other Widow operatives from their control." He extended his hand. One by one, the Widows placed theirs atop his. Their eyes shone like sparks, afraid, hopeful, and determined all at once. Only after the other women had left one by one did Leon turn and catch sight of Natasha and her sister trying to slip away. The moment he spoke his first word in Russian, Yelena's face froze. She had assumed Superman only spoke English, and maybe a little Chinese, but Russian had never occurred to her. After waking up, she had imagined a fresh start. She had not expected an instant social catastrophe. She wanted nothing more than to curl up and disappear. When she tried to edge away, Leon called after them. "Natasha, Yelena, stay here for now." Natasha stopped without question. Yelena froze, then awkwardly pointed at herself with a nervous smile. "Do I have to stay too?" "I think so." Leon nodded and, with an exaggerated puff of his chest, added, "You two were talking about my muscles. I figured I should give you a chance." "What?" Yelena took a step back, flustered, then hesitated, and much to everyone's surprise, extended her right hand. "So, I can touch them?" Natasha's face went dark. She smacked Yelena on the back of the head. "What are you thinking about, waking up like that?" Holding her head, Yelena looked put upon. "But the boss said we could." She'd already fallen into the subordinate mindset. Leon shook his head in disbelief. How could someone Yelena's age leap to such strange conclusions? He turned to the screen. "Jarvis, send the locations and profiles of the Widow operatives scattered worldwide to these two." "Understood," Jarvis replied. Natasha and Yelena hovered behind him, watching portraits and locations light up across the globe. The reason Leon had called them over became clear at once. "So you want the two of us to lead the other widows?" Natasha asked. "Exactly." Leon nodded. "Yelena, Natasha, between the two of you, as former and current Black Widows, you're the best choice to lead them." "Black Widow?" Yelena touched the back of her head, puzzled. "But I'm not." "You're not?" Leon blinked. In the original timeline, Yelena had surpassed Natasha's records and become the new Black Widow. He hadn't expected she wouldn't hold that title yet. Natasha pursed her lips amused. She almost made it. I refreshed those records about a year ago. Leon's eyes widened. No wonder my training was doubled back then. That nearly killed me. Yelena tugged at her hair and, in a burst of energy, lunged to tackle Natasha, only to be pinned down in an instant. Leon, ignore her. What do you want us to do? Natasha asked, holding Yelena down. After we finish here, you two will lead teams to rescue the widows marked on the map, Leon said. Inject the inhibitor. I'll explain how it works, and give each woman the same choice. Bring anyone willing to join to me. For anyone who refuses, destroy their files. Natasha's expression went solemn. I'll complete the mission as soon as possible. Gratitude shone in her eyes. One of her deepest wishes had been for the other widow operatives to have lives of their own. Now, because of Leon, that wish might finally be fulfilled. She felt increasingly indebted to him. Leon leaned on the table. This is just the first step. Once you've done that, I'll have a more important mission. Yelena, still pinned beneath Natasha, perked up. Ooh, are we saving the world? Fighting dark forces? Shut up. Natasha twisted her sister's arm and Yelena cried out. Boss, help! Natasha's being mean because she's older. Yelena wailed, trying to plead with Leon with big wet eyes. Leon's eyebrow twitched. He hadn't remembered Yelena being this lively. He asked Natasha, unable to help himself, how old is she? Born in 1988. She's 20, Natasha answered sharply. Leon fell silent. Yelena had clearly been cooped up too long, and her sudden freedom had made her hyperactive. Best to ignore her. Boss, don't ignore me. Natasha's taking advantage of being older. Ow! Another protest, another whack from Natasha. Yelena's eyes filled with tears as she glared pitifully at Leon, who turned away with practiced indifference. Natasha sighed and tried again. Can't you tell us more about the mission now? There's not much to hide. The mission is simple. Leon's face was lit by the soft blue glow of the screen. I need the widow operatives worldwide to leak evidence through their channels. Evidence of what? Natasha asked, eyes narrowing. That an evil organization people thought dead is not only alive, but has taken root in the world. Leon let the word hang in the air. Hydra. Hydra? Natasha's pupils dilated. It's the organization Captain America helped eliminate. Are you sure? Are we really going to save the world? That's amazing. Yelena squealed again. Leon smiled. You've heard of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Over the next few minutes, he explained how Hydra had been quietly resurrecting itself, how it had infiltrated and even overtaken parts of S.H.I.E.L.D. The sisters listened, stunned. They had believed the Red Room was the darkest institution in existence, but Hydra was a far larger threat. It could compromise entire agencies. That means S.H.I.E.L.D. is the biggest cancer in the world, Natasha said bitterly. In the original timeline, she had worked with S.H.I.E.L.D., but now her view was transformed by what she knew of their corruption. Leon couldn't help the small, guilty pleasure that tugged at him. He had to remind himself he was still wearing his Superman suit, and such thoughts were unbecoming. He mentally filed the amusement away until later. Soon after, Natasha shepherded Yelena out of the command room. The sisters' expressions couldn't have been more different. Natasha's face was grave, her fighting spirit high. She felt stained by her past and wanted, above all, to save the world and atone, even if it meant sacrificing herself. Yelena, by contrast, was almost bouncing with excitement, chattering about becoming a great hero. Whatever their reactions, both began to see Leon's plan as the seed of something large, an organization that would work in the shadows to serve the light. If Leon had overheard them, he would have laughed and smacked the table. The truth was far less lofty. His original motivation for starting the organization had simply been to bring the widow operatives under his command. Chapter 47, Party and Beach. Young Master Leon, perhaps this Miss Natasha really is something. She doesn't seem to be bought by money and she has a righteous heart, Jarvis said after everyone else had left. Leon replied casually, as a subordinate, she's not bad, loyal, indifferent to fame and fortune, unafraid to sacrifice. Where do you find such people? Your perspective is always surprising, sir. It's beyond my calculations, Jarvis answered. That's to be expected. Leon swiped across the console. Oh, search the Red Room's main server for anything connected to Hydra. Searching. 8 undercover files, and 316 transaction records, all linked to Hydra, Jarvis reported, expanding folders on the big screen. However, the Red Room did not realize the targets of these operations and transactions were Hydra. These results were pulled using the Hydra intelligence you previously uploaded, Jarvis added. Leon crossed his arms. 8 undercover agents? The Red Room is resourceful. They've even managed to infiltrate Hydra. The files show another Widow operative infiltrated a Hydra-controlled research institution and was later recommended to join S.H. Yield. From the file, she is effectively a Hydra agent, but she doesn't know it. A double agent, Leon said, clapping. Suddenly, Dreykov's schemes make a little more sense. He thought a moment. Have Natasha find a way to prioritize contact with that Widow and give her an inhibitor. Package all Hydra-related files and send them back to Mr. Stark's main server, he continued. Keep any parts that reference the Red Room. We can use those later. Understood, young Master Leon. The screen showed the transfer, file package uploaded to Mr. Stark's server. Well done. Leon patted the console as if it were an old friend. He stretched. That's enough work for tonight. Next up, sunbathing time. And you, Jarvis, you're off duty too. From now on, you can run freely through this fortress's main server however you like. Thank you, young Master Leon, Jarvis replied. I must remind you, however, that there are still 4 hours until your next scheduled sunbathing session. Leon frowned. His sunbathing in space was on a fixed schedule this month to measure his limits. He couldn't just indulge whenever he liked. Right, I forgot. He rubbed his chin. Then I'll go help the girls clean up the bodies. He floated out of the command center, found the Widow operatives already hard at work, and helped move the bodies. What should have taken the team hours was done in under 10 minutes. With the work finished, Leon called everyone together and announced a party in the mess hall on the fortress's lower deck. There wasn't much food, just simple fast fare, but Leon had ordered cases of whiskey and champagne from the cellar. The girls sat primly around the table at first, each with a plate and a glass, clearly unsure how to behave in such informal company. But as bottle after bottle of high-end champagne was poured, the atmosphere loosened. Quiet conversation became louder, then franker, and finally outright raucous. They sang childhood rhymes in English, German, Chinese, Portuguese, a kaleidoscope of voices and memories. Hands of every shade reached out to Leon in turn. He pushed them away with helpless amusement. By the time the party was in full swing, most of the girls were only beginning to feel the effects. Their specially trained and sometimes modified bodies were designed not to get drunk easily. That didn't stop their behavior from becoming bolder and their talk more suggestive. Leon felt the situation slipping from a simple gathering into something else entirely. So he closed the mess hall door with a practiced excuse and slipped away, leaving a room full of singing, dancing, flushed faces behind him. Next time, I can't have dinner with so many women, he muttered, grabbing a towel and wiping champagne marks from his face. Especially women who never get drunk, but only get more excited as they drink? A soft female voice added. Leon turned. Natasha leaned against the wall and handed him the towel. Why aren't you still in there with them? Your sister's already stripping her outer jacket and dancing the go-pack, he teased. Natasha took the towel back and stepped forward, wiping his neck and behind his ears. If I'd gone in, I would have missed you, she said, amber eyes teasing. Leon looked at her close-up. Without using his vision, he could tell she was undeniably beautiful. Escape the tiger's den only to enter the wolf's lair, he said. Natasha stood on tiptoe and hooked her arms around his neck, pressing her cheek against his. I don't smell bad, do I, you bad man? She breathed. That's hard to say, Leon whispered. You might have to let me check more carefully. Her fingertips traced the S-shaped emblem on his chest. Want to come to my room tonight and find out why your scent is so strange? She asked. Are you serious? That depends on whether you're willing to be the shore where I can stop and take root, she said, voice low. With great pleasure. They slipped into the elevator and rode down to Natasha's quarters. The door clicked shut behind them. Beep, beep, beep. Jarvis's urgent alert cut through the sudden quiet like a siren. What's wrong? Leon fumbled, half asleep, reaching for his phone from where it lay on the floor. The screen lit up with Jarvis's waveform. Young Master Leon, I apologize for disturbing your rest, but Mr. Stark may need your help. Tony? Leon sat bolt upright. What happened? Mr. Stark is on the fortress's top deck and is being blocked by the Widow operatives. It's an emergency. How did he get here? How did he? Leon was bewildered. Tell him to stand down. Don't confront the Widows. They're on our side. I'll be there right now. He shook the arm draped across him and slapped the bulge in the bedding beside him. You're awake. Stop pretending. I'm going to see Tony. You come with me. Natasha opened her eyes. They lacked their usual sharpness. Instead, they were warm and slow, like a summer pool. When next? She murmured, pulling the blanket up around her and revealing a collarbone that faded from white to red. Whenever you want, Leon said as he pulled on his uniform. Come find me when you like. What are we now? She asked, a lopsided, sleepy smile curling her lips. The one and only, Leon said. The most special friend. Greedy, but I'll accept it, Natasha said, hugging her knees beneath the blanket. Who told you to be my boss? You can't dock my pay for this. Pay and benefits won't be a problem. And as for what I gave you last night, weren't your hands a little full to take it all? He teased. Natasha muffled a reply under the blanket. After Leon left, she peeked out again. Alone in the dim room, she made a quick grabbing motion in the air, raised an eyebrow with a hint of mischief, and silently mouthed, Wow. Chapter 48. The law of true fragrance arrives late, but it arrives summer nights above the Arctic Ocean were short. Only 3 hours after the party, the sea of clouds in which the fortress was hidden was already bright with sunlight. When Leon flew through the beams streaming in the windows, using his supervision, he expected to see Tony on the deck, repulsors glowing, confronting a group of armed Widow operatives. What he found, however, was a surprise. What's going on? Leon muttered and accelerated. On the deck, Tony was confronted by 7 or 8 Widow operatives. The rest, some 30 or so, were standing a few meters away, whispering and watching. They smelled faintly of alcohol and occasionally gestured with their hands, comparing notes. The strangest thing, though, was Tony himself. He was wearing the Mark III armor, but he wasn't flying or firing weapons. Instead, he had his hands crossed over his abdomen and was shifting his feet, left to right to left, in a posture more suggestive than the models Leon had seen at Victoria's Secret 2 years earlier. Tony isn't in any danger, Leon thought. So why does it look like an emergency? And what on earth is he doing? Catwalking. He couldn't believe it. Tony was arguing with the Widows, face played up, cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I told you, your new boss and I are brothers. Do you understand? Brothers. I'm his older brother, Tony insisted. If you don't let me in, I'll transfer you to the company as Pepper's secretary. The Widow he was speaking to looked relaxed, holstered gun at her waist, hands clasped behind her back. She looked mildly troubled. Mr. Stark, without Superman's permission, I can't let you in. You already had the AI notify him. You'll get an answer soon. Just wait a little longer. Another Widow added. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled and said, But if Superman approves, I'd be willing to work at Stark Industries. The pay is very good, and I hear the coastline in Los Angeles is nice. Are you serious? Talking salary now? Tony glared. Nicole Parsons, if you let me in, I'll pay you $100,000 a month. Sorry, no, my name isn't Nicole Parsons. It's Mary, the Widow replied. Leon, who had been watching from the side, finally landed and clapped the Widow on the shoulder. Good job. I didn't waste my money treating you to drinks for nothing. Now let's let our Uncle Tony in. Mary and the other Widows stepped aside, smiling. Next time, don't run off in the middle of the party again. The camaraderie from the party had made the Widows and Leon familiar with each other. Their manner had relaxed, but the respect and quiet trust remained. Leon smiled and turned to Tony with open arms. Tony shoved him aside. Move, I need to get in now. His face was flushed as if he'd been holding his breath underwater for minutes. Jarvis, guide me and set the armor thrusters to maximum. All of Mark III's thrusters fired at once, shooting him toward the fortress like a cannonball. Natasha, who had just come out onto the deck, barely avoided a collision and swore. Leon, finishing his thought, said, like a drowning frog. The Widows exchanged amused looks. Is that your brother, Tony Stark? What's wrong with him? Natasha asked, dusting her hands. Leon shrugged. I don't know. Jarvis, what's up with him? Oh, did he need to go to the bathroom? He glanced through with his X-ray vision and saw Tony in the lavatory, taking off his armor, fiddling with something, and then letting out a long, relieved sigh. Leon's face shifted into a grin. "Jarvis, how long has he been on the road?" 3 hours, sir. Mr. Coe. Stark has been very busy today and hadn't had a chance to attend to his physiological needs," Jarvis replied. Leon burst out laughing. So he couldn't hold it in. No wonder his feet were wiggling. The widows realized what had happened, and the deck filled with laughter. Everyone suddenly understood the Stark brothers a lot better. "I'm going to see why Tony actually came," Leon said. "You all carry on." He flew back inside the fortress. A little later, he found Tony leaning against a wall. "Tony, do you still think the liquid circulation system is disgusting now?" Leon asked. Tony's expression immediately froze. After a few seconds, he turned his head and tried to play it cool. "Sometimes you have to admit function matters more than looks." "So it's not disgusting anymore?" Leon pressed, tapping his temple with a finger. "I remember a few days ago someone said, 'All right, I admit it. You were more farsighted. The armor really does need a liquid circulation system," Tony cut in, changing the subject. He grabbed Leon to stop the conversation. "I'll add the function when I get back, okay? Now why don't you show me around your fairy tale castle?" Having gotten Tony to back down, Leon earned a lot of goodwill. He knew when to stop poking and went along with Tony. "Okay, lead the way. By the way, how did you even find this place?" "Jarvis told me that a girl kidnapped my brother while I wasn't home," Tony said. "I was worried he'd get tricked and lose his way, so I rushed over overnight to protect him." "Doesn't that just move you?" Tony spread his hands. "And yet this very brother was aggressive when I made a fool of myself. Too far, isn't it?" Leon laughed. "You were hit in the knee by your own boomerang. Who said he'd rather die than install a liquid circulation system? Also, your nonsense only fools Pepper. Seriously, why did you actually come?" Leon asked. Tony shrugged. "Jarvis told me a little princess built a huge fairy tale castle to give to me, so I came to see it." "Jarvis told you?" "I didn't tell it to keep it a secret," Leon said, stepping forward. "This way, I'll show you what the fortress can do. And by the way, it's your 40th birthday present, so there's plenty of time." They walked from the upper-level command center down toward the engines. Tony analyzed everything as they went. Full stealth coating, radar-absorbing materials, optical stealth. They're really loaded. Worthy of a superpower's legacy, he murmured. "Look at this power system," Tony added. "It's good, but it's still 20 years behind my armor." Chapter 49, Half. "What is that? An anti-gravity rig made of propellers?" Tony's voice bounced off the metal as he stepped from module to module, eyes alight, firing off renovation ideas. "Did I somehow step back into the age of sail? Why does an airborne aircraft carrier use propellers? We need a total overhaul. Replace the power plant with an arc reactor, swap the anti-grav for a focused energy drive, upgrade the stealth suite. And on the flight deck," he went on, "I can build armored storage bays for real-time suit deployment." "Wait, Tony, hold on a minute." Leon cut him off before Tony could start sketching in the air. Tony looked up, genuinely pleased. "What, you've got more ideas?" "No, it's not that," Leon said, then hesitated. "You've misunderstood something." "What?" Tony frowned. "This fortress, it's not yours, not entirely." "What? Jarvis said you gave it to me." "I said it's a 40th birthday present. Are you 40 yet? You're still a few months shy." Tony blinked. 40? You're going to leave this fortress sitting idle for over a year? "Of course not. I still need to use it. The widow operatives are stationed here for now, and... So you're giving me a third-hand present?" Tony's voice went theatrical. "Leon, what kind of monster are you, not even willing to give your older brother a second-hand gift? Have I treated you poorly all these years?" He sounded part hurt, part pleading, and very much like a boy with a new toy. Leon kept his composure, though his eyes betrayed amusement. Tony, meanwhile, had been grinning the whole time. "I'm not..." "All right," Tony cut in again. "Until your 40th, this fortress is half yours, half mine. That counts as you giving me a half now, half later present." Leon hesitated, then gave in. Tony's enthusiasm was a pressure that made Leon's scalp tingle. "Fine," he said. "Half yours, half mine, for now. Normally, the widows will be stationed here for mission handovers and personnel transfers," Leon added. "As long as you don't interfere with them, do whatever you want." Tony grinned like someone who had already won. Of course, I won't interfere with their work. I promise. Leon frowned slightly. By the way, why do you always call them widows? Did the Red Room specifically recruit widows as operatives? They were chosen as children for genetic sequencing and training, Leon said, giving a brief history of the Red Room. His face darkened as he spoke. First Hydra and Satield, then the Red Room. Beneath the world's calm surface, who knows how many organizations like these hide? Introduce me, Tony said. And since you're planning a new organization, give them a new name. You can't have a group of girls calling themselves widows hanging around you all day. It makes you sound like a horrible medieval lord. Leon nodded. They'll have a new name in time. Back on the deck, the girls were still lounging in the sun, talking and staring out at the sea of clouds. For them, newly free, doing nothing for the whole day was its own small luxury. When Leon and Tony returned, the widows rose and crowded around to greet them. After introductions, Tony enthusiastically laid out his plans for the fortress and even offered to pay the operatives a monthly salary, $100,000, until they rotated out. While he talked, Tony noticed the girls giving him odd looks. Leon had to nudge him before the truth came out. The story about Tony holding his bladder in the suit had already spread through the fortress. Embarrassed, Tony excused himself sooner than he wanted. He had a press conference to prepare for. Pepper would be none too pleased if he missed it. Leon, content with a little more sun, said he would return to his space capsule to sleep. He took a moment to smooth the story of the capsule's hatch. He'd smashed it when he first woke up in a burst of anger and strength and had to repair it himself afterward. As Tony and Leon flew off, the widows watched them go, a little envious. To be able to fly whenever you want, one said. It must be amazing. Yelena grinned. Maybe the boss will build me a suit someday. Flames shooting out of my feet, whoosh, and I'd be gone. Natasha stood quietly, eyes following the two until they vanished into the clouds. Yelena noticed and bumped her shoulder. Hey, stop staring. He's gone. Weren't you with the boss for a few hours? Didn't you see enough? None of your business. Natasha pushed her away. Yelena, ever nosy, pressed on. So, you two, what was it like? Tell us. The other girls gathered, curiosity lighting up their faces. Yeah, how was it? Did it feel like being crushed by a hydraulic press, or was it fast like an electric drill? Tell us, or we'll die of envy, someone cried, turning the question into giggles and a chorus of innocent, hungry curiosity. Natasha's cheeks colored faintly. She held up her hand and made a tentative, grasping motion in the air. It was like flying. It didn't stop. He was very strong. The reaction was instantaneous. High-pitched squeals, mock outrage, and a cascade of teasing, Yelena shrieking, others wailing delightedly, filled the deck. The operatives, newly freed but still unabashedly human, fell into the familiar chaos of sisters teasing sisters. 10 o'clock in Los Angeles, Stark Industries Park. The press conference started on time. Pepper stood at the podium and read a long, carefully written speech outlining a plan for rolling out a new energy supply. It was only a preliminary framework. Actual implementation would require coordination with sovereign nations, but it was the kind of announcement that could change the world. Reporters' flashbulbs popped like summer lightning and then held their silence, eyes fixed on Pepper. They all knew they were watching history in the making, the kind of moment that could wind up in textbooks. When Pepper finished, the crowd leaned forward for the inevitable Q&A, but instead of the reporters' questions, Pepper stepped aside. Tony Stark strode up to the podium. Ahem, he said, placing his hands on the wood. Everyone, don't worry. I'll say a few words. The room hushed. Hundreds of eyes trained on him, waiting for whatever came next. Chapter 50. Fury jumps off a cliff. It's finally starting. Jarvis, remember to record it. On the edge of the crowd, Mr. Lion, fresh back from space, held a bucket of popcorn, looking like he was ready for a show. Even if the timing was off, this felt like watching a live Marvel event. Mr. Lion, you seem to be looking forward to Mr. Tony's speech? A soft voice spoke at his side. Mr. Lion frowned, looked over, and stopped walking. You are. He recognized the man immediately. Middle-aged, suited, a slightly receding hairline, a kindly face. Phil Coulson, Captain America's loyal fan. I'm Phil Coulson, from the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division. Coulson offered a business card with a warm smile. That's a mouthful. Do you need anything? Mr. Lyon took the card, examined it, then handed it back. You don't need to ask me. Tony's speech will cover the situation there. Just wait. Coulson looked toward the stage, curiosity and a little apprehension written across his face. He felt something big was about to happen. He nodded politely to Mr. Lyon, pulled out his comms, and contacted his superior. On stage, Tony flipped through a few pages of notes and then tossed them aside. I'm sure you've been following the events in the Middle East. There are barbarians over there using weapons from who knows where, and they're slaughtering civilians. Of course, in the past, Obadiah was secretly supplying them with weapons. Now he's gone, but they still have arms. A reporter raised a hand. Are you talking about the Ten Rings gang, the ones who kidnapped you and were later wiped out by Superman? Tony choked for a moment. Of course, reporters would always tie it back to Superman. He sighed and cut to the chase. Most of the Ten Rings forces are in the Middle East. Well, Afghanistan, actually. Recently, someone in Iron Man armor has been operating there, taking out these bandits. Many people are starting to call him a hero. I want to say he has plenty of flaws. He made a lot of mistakes when he was young, but you still think he's a hero, which is... Another reporter, are you talking about that kid who's been trying to imitate Superman? Do you know him? Tony's words stuck. He stared at the reporter for a long beat, then snapped, That's Iron Man, not Iron Boy. And I am Iron Man. Silence swept the room. People assumed he was joking, a few forced polite laughs. The only person who was actually laughing, really laughing, was Mr. Lyon. Tony's face darkened. He pursed his lips, stepped back, and with a flick of his wrist revealed two wristbands. Jarvis, boom! An oval flight pod burst in from the side, skimming over the reporters' heads. Reporters gasped and dived aside as the pod disintegrated and the armor assembled around Tony. I am Iron Man. The faceplate slid down, metal plates clicked into place, and Tony repeated his declaration calmly and firmly. This time the room was stunned. The gold and red armor gleamed at center stage like an industrial marvel. The crowd surged. Hundreds of hands shot up, a press scrum of shouting questions. Evening. Honestly, you might as well have walked in the suit from the start. You wouldn't have been embarrassed by the press all day. Mr. Lyon pushed open the mansion door and called back to Tony. Pepper had made them work a full day after the conference. Endless paperwork, endless meetings. Even Jarvis had seemed to protest. Mr. Lyon had already decided that once Natasha rescued the widow operatives, he'd make her CEO of the internet company. It would be tiring, but it would show he trusted her, and handling billions in transactions would give her a sense of accomplishment. He'd leave the formation of the organization to Yelena. She needed the training. It was a win all around. For now, though, he just wanted a good dinner to wipe away the day. He stopped as Tony's voice came from behind him. Is that what you think? I saw you. You were the loudest laugher in the room. Am I? Why are you standing still? Tony stuck his head out from behind Mr. Lyon. By the floor-to-ceiling window stood a figure in a black trench coat, back to them, gazing out over the sea. The dark hair, the deliberately mysterious posture. There was only one person it could be, Director Nick Fury. Jarvis? Tony called. Welcome home, Mr. Stark and young Master Lyon. Jarvis replied immediately. Localized electromagnetic shielding detected. Interesting technology. Tony peered at the shielded section of Jarvis's monitors. Looks like part of my systems got blocked. What do you think we should do? Mr. Lyon snapped his fingers. Jarvis, have the armor blast whoever's standing at the window out. Yes, young master. Mechanical whirring started downstairs. Fury, who had been turned at the sound, panicked and spun around. Wait, don't be so impulse. I am Director Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick, holy crap. Before he could finish, Jarvis had already brought Supermark 1 up the stairs. The blue and red armor raised its hands. Repulsors charged and pointed. Fury, seeing the suit was about to fire and that the AI wouldn't be stopped, cursed and moved. Motherfucker! I'll be back! We need to talk! He smashed through the floor-to-ceiling window and leapt off the cliff. The repulsor blast grazed past him. Tony went to the window and watched a parachute open below. He really has endless backup plans, just like people say, he said, a little impressed. Mr. Lyon walked over. Jarvis, you need an upgrade if anyone can just shield part of the house. If I'd been running on the airborne fortress's main computer, his shielding wouldn't have affected me, Jarvis replied. Humph, you're making demands now? Fine, upgrade his main computer, Mr. Lion said. Tony glanced back. By the way, if your Black Widow operative had been blasted out when she came yesterday, we wouldn't have found the Red Room. Why didn't you do it then? Tony pressed. There were things I wanted to confirm, Mr. Lion said. He leaned against the window frame, flicking the remaining glass fragments away. I planned to pull information from her myself. I wasn't going to just toss her out. What were you trying to find out? Tony asked. A secret, Mr. Lion said. You had a secret from me? I think you were just after her, Tony accused, voice going up. That's certainly a factor, Mr. Lion admitted. I made the same mistake most men do. Tony thought about it and, begrudgingly, said, You have a point. He imagined himself in the same situation and knew he wouldn't have been able to turn down a beautiful woman either. Chapter 51. Half a month. Half a month flew by. Black Egg, who Fury had said would return, still hadn't shown up. Tony said he'd packaged the Hydra intelligence and sent it to Black Egg's email. By now, the man was probably cursing S.H.I.E.L.D. 100 times a day. In the meantime, Natasha had led the women in freeing over 200 Widow operatives from control. The vast majority were willing to join the organization Leon had yet to formally create. Fewer than 10 chose to leave, exhausted, emotionally broken, or simply wanting to pursue their own futures. As promised, Leon destroyed the files of those who walked away. Perhaps in a few years, some would regret the choice they'd made tonight. At Pepper's request, Tony had started coming back to the company to help. The rollout of the new energy program couldn't move forward without him. Leon's biggest gains in those 2 weeks were the steady growth of his strength and the completion of the upper limit prediction experiment. 2 days earlier, after a sun exposure session and a thrust test, Leon came home. Tony stared at him like someone looking at a monster. A colossal force of 890,000 tons. In half a month, your strength has almost doubled. Leon nodded calmly. I can feel it accelerating. It's like a geometric progression. Tony rubbed his temples. But over the last 2 days, I noticed the increments are getting smaller. Maybe that means I'm approaching the peak. I'm dying to see the upper limit prediction. Today's the last day, right? It's time for the results. Give me 5 minutes. Tony hurried to the computer and began crunching numbers. 5 minutes later, he printed a prediction graph covered in dots and lines. Okay, done. Leon took the paper and read it. Tony narrated as if giving a lab report. Those dots are the power after each sun exposure. The lines show the increase. According to the model, your strength limit will be around 2 million tons. 2 million tons per arm. Tony hesitated, then added, and you'll hit your peak period at about 1 million tons. Before that peak, your gains will speed up like a snowball. Afterward, the rate will slow until it finally levels off at the upper limit. Tony watched Leon closely. He'd expected some disappointment. Leon had always chased power, but Leon didn't look upset. If anything, he seemed relieved. Why the look? Like you thought I'd burst into tears and you should pass me the tissues. You're not sad about having a limit, Tony asked, pointing at the graph. Why would I be? I expected it. Knowing the limit gives me direction. Leon meant it. If 2 million tons per arm was the ceiling, that didn't mean the end of progress. It meant he could keep sunning himself while exploring other ways to grow stronger. He could study at Kamartaj, learn Qigong in the great Luo village of Kunlun, or pursue the unusual paths practiced by mystics, contracts with lesser demon gods, and then devouring them to ascend, the very kind of path Doctor Strange had walked. He could seek the power of the divine dragon in Kunlun, a multi-dimensional power with slim chances but huge payoff. He could even, once he'd explored the options in this world, use his travel ability to visit other worlds in search of strength. Tony added an anecdote. I watched a Superman cartoon recently. He absorbed too much power, like 200 trillion tons, and his body started to collapse. Maybe for most Kryptonians, 2 million tons really is an unreachable limit, Leon said after a moment. If that were so, breaking the limit might mean no longer being purely Kryptonian. He grumbled about that privately. 2 days later, after a lavish dinner, Tony retreated to the lab and buried himself in upgrades. Leon flew into space. Since the simulation tests, he'd been living out of the titanium alloy space capsule, returning to the house only for food or when he felt like it. He'd even put off dealing with Natasha's request for a salary increase. That night, he crawled back into the capsule, fell into a deep sleep, and should have had a peaceful night until uninvited guests showed up. Under a bright moon with clouds drifting across the sky, a group of masked figures in black crept over the cloud tops toward the Stark mansion, moving like pillbugs emerging from their holes. They could have been antique swordsmen. Their exposed eyes were cold and ruthless. They might have been robbers, but they moved with the discipline of ninjas whose techniques had been handed down for centuries. Each footstep fell exactly where the last had. They made no sound. They threaded through the blind spots left by surveillance cameras. Sometimes they leapt as one, sometimes they slithered, resembling water spiders skimming the surface. The team reached the mansion's roof, found Tony's bedroom, and descended with grappling hooks, laser cutters, suction cups, silent gloves, professional tools for a silent break-in. They removed the bedroom glass with practiced efficiency and slid into the room like fish. The leader scanned the room, then shook his head. Tony Stark wasn't there. He signaled for a sweep downstairs. Leave no one alive. The team nodded. The leader held up 5 fingers and began a slow countdown. Back in the lab, Tony had been leaning in a soft chair, chin propped on his hand, staring at Jarvis's defense interface. He'd been too busy to finish the upgrade, and the surveillance system upgrade had created a temporary hole in the all-around monitoring. He'd thought the short downtime wouldn't be a problem. At that moment, an arm reached out and plucked Tony's glasses off his face. Still thinking, Tony? The enemies are at the door. Leon had been asleep in orbit when he heard the telltale sound of glass being cut and the thud of many soft footsteps below. He woke, activated supervision, and saw the situation clearly. He flew back to the lab in 5 seconds. The recent increase in his strength had also amplified his biofield. Now he could fly at hundreds of times the speed of sound and move quietly as a passing bird. Tony's surprise melted into relief when he saw him. What enemies? Jarvis didn't warn me. Damn, is it Black Egg again? No, Leon said calmly. A group of ninjas, martial artists. He flexed his wrist and added, I came back to tell you to finish upgrading Jarvis. After that, I'll take care of them. Chapter 52. Death Notice from the 10 Rings Gang. Oh no, no, no. Tony's heart leapt when he heard Leon was about to move, and he sprang to his feet. They came for me. If anyone's going to do anything about this, it's me. He barked a command. Jarvis, suit up. The flight pod that had been idling beside him in the lab split open and snapped onto his body. Leon didn't try to stop him. The dozen men upstairs looked like ordinary muscle, maybe with a weird trick or two, but no match for Tony. Once he was in the armor, he shattered the glass door and shot upstairs. Wait for my report downstairs. His voice boomed into the stairwell. Hello, handsome guys in diapers on your heads. Iron Man's here. Clearly pent up from a busy schedule, Tony's swagger came right back the moment the armor closed. Leon trod over the broken glass and followed. The attackers hadn't expected their target to burst out from below. Repulsors spun, blasts hammered out, and the intruders went down without even a scream. Those who tried to resist were knocked flat in an instant. With Iron Man's full output, the villa's ceiling vibrated. By the time Leon stepped into the living room, bodies littered the floor and half a wall was cracked. Great. He'd have to call the renovation company tomorrow. Only one attacker remained, backed into a corner. These were clearly professionals. Not a single one had cried out when they died. Leon assumed the last man would fight to the end, but instead he retreated, pulled a simple envelope from his chest, and slit his own throat. He collapsed, clutching the envelope, frozen in the posture of handing it over. So he didn't plan to die fighting, Leon said, walking over to Tony. He wanted me to read that letter. Tony flipped up his faceplate, and the suit peeled away. He stepped forward to pick up the envelope, but Leon beat him to it. Careful, Leon warned. Poisoned letters are a thing. Next time you touch something your enemy gives you, keep your suit on. Tony blinked. Poisoned letters? Who even does that anymore? Some Eastern wuxia stories love this plot, Leon said dryly. He sniffed the paper. Okay, no poison. I was overcautious. Tony leaned in as Leon opened the envelope. The paper was ordinary, a kind of bamboo paper, a material common in parts of Southeast Asia. Could this be the hand? They read the note together. To Mr. Tony Stark, congratulations on passing my test. You eliminated the peripheral Ten Rings gang members who came to carry out the assassination. You have proven yourself worthy of having your head personally taken by me. In recent years, you are the first to reach this stage. First, let me introduce myself. I am Wenwu, leader of the Ten Rings gang. The Ten Rings gang you annihilated half a month ago were crude imitators of my organization. I thank you for eliminating those counterfeit imposters. However, though only imitators, they represent the prestige of the Ten Rings gang worldwide. Since you have declared to the world that you destroyed the Ten Rings gang, I am compelled to kill you to uphold the honor of the Ten Rings gang. 1 month from now, I will come personally to claim your head. Signed, Wenwu. They finished reading in silence. Tony's brow tightened. So the Ten Rings gang we saw was only the tip of the iceberg. This is a hidden organization. He thought of Hydra and the Red Room. Any secret group operating in the shadows was usually bad news. Before he could blast further theories, Leon snapped. What a Wenwu! Leon's eyes flared red. The paper in his hand shattered. He floated off the floor, clothes whipping despite no wind. The red light in his eyes flared hotter and hotter, like something ancient and furious waking up. For a heartbeat, he looked like a blood-stained god. Tony, you rest, he said flatly. I'll go kill a few people and be back. The chill in his voice contradicted the casual phrasing, as if he were announcing he'd grab a sandwich. Tony turned to grab him, but the pressure of Leon's presence forced him to step back. Now, Tony managed, voice shaking. He gave us a month's notice, Leon said. I won't let them see tomorrow's sun. Leon hung there, an oppressive weight that made the air feel thin and fragile as glass. Tony had never seen him like this. His throat tightened. For some reason, the sight made him flustered. Leon, calm down, Tony pleaded. He named me. He's after me. I should be the one to handle this. Don't be rash. Come down and talk, Leon snapped. Tony lunged and ended up clinging to Leon's calf. Hey, listen, Leon, don't rush in. Look, Leon said, still suspended. He issued the challenge to me, to Iron Man. I have to answer it. Otherwise, what was the point of that press conference? Was that just to show off? Tony tried humor, but it came out shaky. Leon looked at the billionaire hanging from his leg, and after a beat, the red in his eyes faded. He dropped to the floor and Tony's feet found the ground again. The anger that had surged through him eased somewhat, diffused by the ridiculous sight of Tony clinging on like a barnacle. You always misunderstand me, Tony said, slipping an arm around Leon's shoulders the moment he could. I am Iron Man. It's my responsibility. I wanted to do something about these people from the start. This is an opportunity. He went on, earnest and a little theatrical. The Ten Rings are trouble. They provoked me, and I've been looking for them. Let me investigate and deal with them, okay? The red in Leon's eyes had gone. He studied Tony oddly. You really want to take on Wenwu? Come on, Tony said, trying to smile. You handled the Red Room. I can handle a gang of ring-wearers. Leon's expression softened into something unreadable. Seeing him furious had tightened something in Tony's chest, a familiar, unwanted tug. It reminded him of a night 17 years ago, crouched by his parents' graves, clutching a tiny, crying Leon. Rain had blurred his face, tears indistinguishable from the downpour. He had felt anger, grief, confusion in a single raw knot. Little Leon had reached up with wet, chubby hands and gently wiped Tony's face, patting his cheeks as if reassuring a parent. In that moment, Tony had known this child was the only family he'd ever have, and he had vowed to keep him safe, to make sure he always smiled. He had done his best to keep that promise. Leon had grown, had become something like a protector in his own right. That shift, from protector to someone who now protected Tony in return, unsettled him. He felt guilty for not being able to shield Leon anymore. Seeing Leon so angry and ready to strike only made that guilt tighten into resolve. Leon had no idea how stormy things were inside Tony. He glanced at the arc reactor glowing in Tony's chest and shook his head. You can't beat him. From what Leon had seen of Wenwu in the movie, Tony would need to be far along, practically at the end of his development, to stand a chance. And Tony was still running a palladium arc reactor? Sorry, that wasn't nearly enough. You're saying I can't beat him before you even see me fight? Tony's eyes widened. It's like you know him. Leon hoisted the two bodies off the lawn and started toward the house. I actually know a few things. He set them down and began speaking as he worked. The Ten Rings is an organization that's been around for a long time, named after the leader's treasure, the Ten Rings themselves. Those rings have terrifying power. They can grant a long life and an extraordinarily strong body. Legend says they even contain an energy that can open dimensions. That Wenwu found the rings 1,000 years ago and has lived on. How can you beat someone like that? He went on, explaining the differences between the movie's 10 rings and the ones in the comics. Same name, very different capabilities. In the comics, the rings are psychic energy weapons that absorb and store kinetic energy. In the right hands, their power can skirt cosmic levels, on par with infinity stones. The movie's rings, though powerful, looked like small potatoes compared to that lore. Still, Wenwu as shown in the film was no opponent for the current Tony. Are you serious? Tony said, incredulous. 1,000 years? Opens dimensions? His instinctive skepticism faltered when he saw Leon's expression. He realized Leon wasn't joking. All right, fine, I believe you. Thanks, Leon Encyclopedia. Tony pulled on his mark and helped move the bodies. Let me think. 1,000-year organization, an ancient living fossil, this is new territory. But I'm solving this. If they're coming for me, I'll meet them head on. Leon tossed another corpse onto the lawn. How exactly do you plan to do that? With that poisonous thing in your chest? Tony bristled and ducked back into the house to haul in the next batch of bodies. Don't say that. Let me try. If it fails, you can step in. With you and Superman around, how could anything go wrong for me? You do know palladium causes poisoning, right? Tony sounded surprised. Leon had already picked up 2 more men. I studied chemistry in high school. Thank you. They moved in silence for a beat until Leon stopped and turned. If you're serious about fighting, upgrade the mark first and heal that hole in your chest. Tony blinked. Also, why do you still wear the reactor if there are no shrapnel fragments in your chest? Are you risking your life for fashion? Tony coughed, embarrassed. There are complicated reasons. Leon narrowed his eyes. Don't tell me you actually forgot palladium poisoning. What are you talking about? How could I forget? Tony's face went sheepish. I was testing the limits of palladium's effects on the body. That's all. Leon slapped a hand to his forehead. You're hopeless. I thought you had other plans, Tony protested. I assumed you'd help. You never even considered this problem, Leon said flatly. A week ago, Tony had been strutting around with the arc reactor like a toy. It wasn't until he'd been in the lab last weekend that the big opening in his chest had finally been filled with something else. Whatever Howard Stark had left behind for him had been planted then, and presumably that's when the palladium poisoning started. That's all in the past, Tony barked, throwing down 2 bodies to change the subject. Only children dwell on the past. We should be thinking about how to improve the mark. He reached for Leon's shoulder, and Leon dodged. Tony clapped awkwardly. Since you say I can't beat Wenwu, help me develop the mark. For the next month, brothers working together, we'll make history. Leon raised an eyebrow. You don't want your big brother to be bullied by outsiders, do you? I've been waiting for you to get your comeuppance, Leon replied. Working together on research is out of the question. I've got to go to the universe to get stronger. He hesitated, then added, but a few days ago I used my vision to go through the files Dad left at S-Shield. He'd been researching a new element compatible with the arc reactor. The clue's on a design board at the Stark Industries park. You can go look. Leon chose to tell Tony about the new element. He piled all the bodies together and burned them to ash with a heat ray, then blew the dust out of the villa. Tony took off his mark, stunned. He really researched a new element? Are you kidding me? No joke. It was his last gift to you. Leon patted Tony's arm and walked inside. Talk to Fury for the documents. Everything your father wanted to tell you is in there. Leon decided not to march on the Ten Rings headquarters himself. If Tony wanted to try, he could. If Tony failed, Leon would step in. This was technically a personal grievance between Tony and the Ten Rings anyway. Tony stood there for a long beat, the idea of a final gift from Howard making him oddly quiet. After a few minutes, he found Leon. So you're really letting me handle the 10 rings? Do whatever you want, Leon said, but I don't have high hopes. Don't come crying, Leon, save me if you lose. You agreed? That's great. I knew you would. You're my brother. Tony cheered, taking the taunt in stride. Leon read him instantly. Tony was all bluster. He'd never ask for help unless cornered. Leon sighed. This Tony was spoiled. Maybe he could swap him with a better model from another universe someday. It was a fleeting, half-joking thought. Don't celebrate yet, Leon said. He'd already warned Tony he'd lose and wasn't about to let him forget it. Lose? Not with the new element. Everything will change. Tony waved him off. Dream on. Mark III plus a new element won't be enough. That hole in your chest is a fatal flaw. Unless you can heal it, which there's currently no Earth tech to do. Maybe not necessarily. Leon stroked his chin. Advanced medicine might not exist on Earth, but it existed elsewhere in the universe. The universe was far, but there were other worlds, some possibly with healing tech and a low-power ceiling where Tony could train without getting overwhelmed. That sounded like the perfect solution. He'd studied interworld travel before. His power worked like a crude search engine. Enter keywords, good medical tech, low-power ceiling, and the ability would estimate the energy needed to get there. Pay the traffic, confirm the search, and the ability would open a portal to the chosen world. The catch was it didn't recognize movie names from Leon's old life. Only keywords would do. Leon's eyes flickered. He felt the pull to set off already. If he could find a world that could heal Tony and let him grow stronger without spiking the power scale, it might be worth the trip. He began thinking of search terms. Chapter 54, Across the World. Not necessarily. What method do you have? You're not going to use silicone or something to fill it, are you? Tony scowled. Don't even suggest that. I'd rather build a new elemental arc reactor and put it in. Of course not. I'm going to travel to another world. I'm sure I'll bring you back good news, Leon said. Traveling, Tony muttered. Then his eyes lit up. You mean you're going to other worlds? God, you have to take me with you. I've wanted to go for ages. He became almost childlike with excitement. He took a few hurried steps, fingers worrying at his ear and cheek. Wait, what should I bring? Iron Man armor, electronics, US dollars? No, gold. Definitely gold, and here we go again. Leon watched, helpless, as Tony spun off into his own little frenzy. You've got it wrong, Leon said. I'm going alone. Alone? Tony froze. Yes, alone. Leon emphasized it. Really, Tony's face registered disbelief. Really? Leon nodded. You're leaving me here? Tony's fingers trembled as if he'd been betrayed. It's bad enough you gave me a second-hand birthday present, and now you won't even take me on the trip? Leon couldn't help but smile. Tony's expression was exactly like a Siberian husky whose owner had walked out the door, stunned and mournful. No, Leon said. There are too many unknowns. I need to test it by myself first. If the travel is stable and I can bring people, then I'll bring you. In short, if there's a chance in the future, I'll take you. Aren't you planning to go to the DC universe too? I'll bring you along then. Leon tried to reassure him. His travel ability was generous. With enough energy, he could probably haul the entire Marvel universe along. But this is the first time. I have an iron body to test with. You don't. That was his reason. Tony opened his mouth to protest, then sighed and accepted it. Leon was right. The first trip needed caution. Adding Tony now would be a liability. He spread his hands. If anything goes wrong, you must come back immediately. Tony's imagination, however, was already cataloging worst-case scenarios. What if you encounter Kryptonite the moment you land? I'll go wearing Supermark 1, Leon said after a beat. Exactly. You have to wear armor. Bring 5 arc reactors, just in case, and disinfectant and equivalents you need. Tony rattled off a long list of instructions, only pausing midstream to drink some water. Okay, make these preparations. When you're ready to go, tell me. I'll watch from here. The next evening, Leon stood in the underground garage, surrounded by testing instruments. He wore Supermark 1 and carried a large travel backpack. Tony had packed it himself. 5 arc reactors, 10 kilos of gold, disinfectant spray, hemostatic spray. A little of everything Tony thought might be useful. Leon suspected most of it was overkill, but he appreciated the care. Are you sure you're leaving now? Tony asked from behind a projection screen. Yes, Leon nodded. I should be back quickly. With my power, it's simple. Tony shook his head. I'm only worried about kryptonite and a red sun. If you run into danger, come back immediately. Don't worry. Even if I'm suppressed and lose my powers, I'll manage. The weakness of a Superman is not the knowledge in his head. Leon tapped his temple. I won't forget what I know. He slung the bag over his armor. Take care of yourself and Pepper. Tony had been at the industrial park that morning and brought the design board back. You'd better come back fast, he said with a proud smile. I can make the new element core tonight. He'd analyzed the display board that afternoon and, thanks to Leon's hints, decoded it. It was a structural diagram for a new element. With a particle collider, he could synthesize it. Tony, always proud of a breakthrough, marveled at his father's ingenuity as he pieced it together. Leon nodded. I hope so. Tony set the instruments running and began recording. Data on space-time travel was a prize few scientists ever got to collect. He wasn't about to miss it. Start searching worlds. Keywords: limb regeneration, enhancement of Kryptonian strength, low upper limit of world supernatural power, no threat. World anchored successfully. Calculating energy required for travel. Travel confirmed. Leon internally activated his travel ability, confirming each step and value as Tony's instruments logged them. A clear, almost divine message surfaced in his mind. Another world had been located. Dozens of options appeared, each meeting the criteria. The worlds presented themselves like chaotic, black hole-like bubbles, offering no information beyond their silhouette. He could only pick one at random. A sensation, both real and surreal, descended, and with it, Leon sensed the energy needed for this trip. It was roughly 1% of his physical strength. To anyone else, that might have sounded negligible, but Leon's strength was like a person-shaped natural disaster. 1% was enormous. Converted into familiar terms, it amounted to at least 9 full days' worth of global power generation. At that moment, he understood why his original world's gifts had been the Kryptonian bloodline and space-time travel. If he'd only had the Kryptonian heritage, he'd have to toil in the Marvel Universe, constantly hunting opportunities to break limits. If he'd only had travel, he'd spend ages and fortunes collecting the energy to hop between worlds. Together, the two abilities complemented each other perfectly. Leon felt a strange excitement. Perhaps this combination would finally let him shatter the upper limit. He confirmed the decision to start. As soon as the thought solidified, a powerful suction bloomed inside him, like a black hole attaching itself to his limbs and bones, drawing everything it could. The pull lasted only a moment. After it had siphoned 1% of his physical strength, it released, and a different force, like a tug, enveloped him. Leon had a split-second premonition. He only had time to open his eyes and wave at Tony before he vanished, gone in the next heartbeat. When he disappeared, the space he'd occupied didn't ripple. There was no wormhole, no heavenly gate, nothing to mark the spot. It was as if a layer had been selected in a drawing program and cut away. The image simply ceased to exist. Holy cow, Tony shouted. This is unscientific. Every instrument on site registered nothing abnormal, as if nothing had changed at all. To Tony, Leon's disappearance was like a drop of water evaporating in the ocean, no ripples. He sprinted to where Leon had been, looking around frantically, his worldview rattled. How could interworld travel be so silent and undetectable? This was ridiculous, and worse, it felt decidedly unscientific. Leon, you little rascal, you better come back soon, Tony called after him. The moment Leon was gone, Tony felt strangely off-kilter. Leon, meanwhile, felt as if he'd been pushed into a void. A force propelled him forward through an empty space. He couldn't open his eyes or speak. He felt like an ant swept into a current, not pinned, but unable to steer, constantly moving. A better comparison might be a patient in a coma being transported in an ambulance, carried along without control. The sensation didn't last long. He passed through a thin, water-like membrane and felt the ripples it made around him. Then the world spun. Solid ground came back under his feet, and he regained control of his body. The armor's systems, strangely dormant during the trip, rebooted. The faceplate's eyes glowed faintly. He opened his own eyes and took in the scene. Flames climbed the sides of skyscrapers, dozens of scattered fires converging to light the night sky in angry red. Broken glass glittered, street signs lay twisted, cars with crumpled fronts and torn doors littered the streets. Searchlight-equipped helicopters hovered above. This was a city at war, or a city that just been shelled. Abandoned vehicles blocked the road in chaotic ways, frozen traces of people fleeing. Jarvis came online. Young Master Leon, are you all right? In the garage, for unknown reasons, all armor electrical systems ceased operation. I'm fine. We've arrived in another world, Jarvis. Leon scanned the ruined city. The systems cut out because of the spatial temporal transfer. Don't worry. First, try to connect to the network. Jarvis's job was to get online and gather data. Leon stood still, closed his eyes, and released all suppression on his super hearing. Instantly, the sounds of the world flooded him. Wind, crackling fire, screams, countless noises layered and spinning like a kaleidoscope. In this moment, his hearing felt synesthetic, timbers painted images. He sifted through the noise for useful threads. Wesker, welcome to HCF. You're now our battlefield commander. Marvin, hold the west gate. Chris, Jill and Brad are in danger. Going back for them. Tell Ada Wong we must secure the G-virus. Leon filtered the chaos down to a handful of recognizable lines. He opened his eyes. This is the Resident Evil game world, Raccoon City. He'd seen the plot lines in his previous life. It fit. So the traversal ability can reach places outside the Marvel Universe's scope, Jarvis observed. Leon ran through possibilities. The biohazard world doesn't threaten me directly, he frowned. But how does the traversal retrieval choose its destinations? Did this world even match the criteria I gave? His mind jumped to practical matters. Limb regeneration, one of his unresolved problems, might be addressed by this world's viruses. The T-virus, the G-virus, they could stimulate regeneration, but they'd also turn me into trash. Zombies would likely weaken a Kryptonian's physiology instead of boosting it. He pictured himself infected and slowed by mutated flesh and thought, not without a little annoyance, how absurd it was. Then he noticed something else, a faint logic. There is one way in this world that could genuinely increase my power. He looked up at the night sky, painted red by fire, and realized the implication. A yellow sun. He grimaced. Of course, a yellow sun can strengthen me. Fantastic. Is that why I'm here? The Marvel Earth already has a yellow sun. Am I supposed to go sunbathing across worlds? He decided his traversal keywords had been too vague. Next time, keywords like enhanced genetic potential or methods to become stronger besides sun exposure. He let out a short laugh. Consider this reconnaissance. Jarvis, no need to pull more online data. We're heading back, he began. Before he could act, an invisible fluctuation washed over him from head to toe. Leon's heart skipped. A coolness brushed his brain, like an expert hand had descended and given his cerebral cortex a meticulous spa treatment. A clear-headedness bloomed. Parts of his thinking felt optimized, smoother, sharper. The change was wholly benign. His armored body resisted nothing. What had just happened? Leon's mind filled with questions, but the sensation itself was beneficial. As he was puzzling over the unexpected upgrade, he detected a strange signal through his world traversal sense and activated the ability. Immediately, a fragmentary cryptic payload drilled into his thoughts. An impression rather than a sentence, voicing a handful of words directly into his head, as if an invisible presence had tapped his forehead and whispered. Gift, salvation, doomsday, evolution, organism, more. The message was garbled and instinct-driven. Leon pushed his superbrain to work, running millions of thoughts in a second, yet only 6 words cohered. The transmitter didn't seem self-aware. It was more like a raw set of urges or keywords than a communicative intelligence. The feeling reminded him of a world consciousness, though it might just be a compound of human collective will within that world. Whatever it was, it had already offered him something, the cerebral spa he'd just received. Gift likely referred to that. The exchange made sense on its own terms. Give first, then ask for help. Leon considered it. He hadn't solicited the benefit, but it had been handed to him outright. Helping this biohazard world, his little brother, as he half joked, wasn't out of the question. It would also let him study precisely what the benefit had done. He was still weighing the decision when a violent explosion rocked the rooftop of the building above him. The thunder drew his attention. Leon looked up. The helicopter that was hovering just now, did it just explode? The downed chopper, a blur of twisted metal and flame, smashed into the side of a neighboring building. It skidded and snagged. a shower of glass and masonry rattling down the facade. The scene gave Leon an odd, uncomfortable déjà vu. In this world, vehicles never seem to survive very long. Players joke that Resident Evil might as well be called Vehicle Crisis. Almost every operable vehicle in the game met a violent end. A helicopter detonating didn't feel out of place. Maybe it had been overloaded with big, muscle-bound men and simply blew. Leon let the dark thought hang for a moment. Then another sound reached him from above. "A car?" he breathed. "There's a car on the roof?" From the top of the 7-story building, a vehicle ripped through the railing and plunged free. A towering, pitch-black figure sprawled on its roof. The car slammed into the street with a bone-jarring thud. It flipped, tore itself right side up, then inverted again, finally coming to rest upside down. The man who'd ridden it was exposed, huge, motionless, while someone still screeched inside. The girl's screams cut through the chaos as she was slammed against the doors and roof of the car, tossed by forces that should have torn her apart. Leon felt a pang of sympathy, then irritation at himself for noticing how unreasonably resilient she looked. She had just fallen from a 7-story height, and after a dizzy moment was grimacing and hauling herself out of the wreck. Even more absurd was the massive man. Thrown from 7 stories by a car, he picked himself up within seconds and stalked back toward the vehicle. A survivalist beauty who refused to die like a cockroach, a thick-skinned brute who kept coming despite being crushed and blown apart. The combination was unmistakable. Jill Valentine and a tyrant, one of Umbrella's nemesis-like bioweapons. Leon's memories of the game filled in the details. Jill had been part of STARS, one of the first to face the outbreak. She was known for her shoulder-length hair, her blue vest, and the cool, stubborn kind of justice that didn't quit. The tyrant, engineered from the T-virus, was a remorseless monster. "Good. I can now place time and location," Leon said to himself. The scene matched the game too perfectly. Based on that, he estimated the moment. It's September 28, 1998, about 9 at night, near Raccoon City's Redstone Station. "You are correct, young Master Leon," Jarvis said suddenly. "It is 9:14 p.m. You are less than 1,000 meters from Redstone Station." Leon flipped open his faceplate and arched an eyebrow. "So you're on the net again?" "Yes. Previously, you instructed me to stop collecting online information, so my current knowledge of this world was limited." "Cancel that instruction. Resume collection. Focus on the Umbrella Corporation, military movements, and the HCF organization." Leon's voice was calm. He could smell gunpowder and something sour in the air, fear mixed with burning fuel. "Understood, young master." He said nothing more, eyes tracking the wreckage as Jill finally wriggled free of the car. She looked up, spotted him, and for a second their gazes locked. Urgency flared across her face. Are you human?" she called, squinting at the armored stranger. Leon's power armor was far beyond 1998 tech, shiny blue and red plating, sleek like a racing craft, a round light glowing in the chest. The faceplate had slid closed, leaving only 2 faint blue eyes. Drake-like, impossibly advanced. She waved frantically. "Run! Get out of here! Don't just stand there! Go somewhere safe! It's not safe!" She bellowed without noticing the fuel leak feeding a Santa of fire behind her. The car's hull hissing, already a furnace. If she didn't move, the explosion would engulf her, and then the tyrant would finish the job. Yet her first instinct was to warn the armored stranger. Sizzle, boom. The car detonated. Flames erupted, a rolling wall surging forward. Jill winced, felt the heat bite at her cheeks, and for a moment the world narrowed into the memory of that mansion, of teammates falling to ghouls. Had she been destined to die this way? Then everything jerked. Her vision blurred and the world lurched. The burning roar that should have swept over her was suddenly 10 meters away. The wall of flames slammed into the tyrant instead. Jill blinked, stunned, and then breathing a shaky sigh of relief, until she realized what had happened. The man in the iron shell was at her side, one heavy arm around her. The armor was massive, but its plating glinted like something out of a sci-fi movie. Sleek lines, polished blue and red, an almost decorative chest light. The faceplate's 2 blue lights were the only sign of a person beneath. Jill's memory put a face there, handsome, briefly glimpsed, but there was no time for introductions. A rushing roar filled the street as a section of burning wreckage hurtled down from the building. The armored figure stepped forward and grabbed half the car with a bone-crushing thud, anchoring it so it didn't crush them both. The flames that had been poised to consume Jill now split around them, and the tyrant lumbered out of the inferno, its black skin blistering, its body an inferno of its own. "Humph," the armored man muttered, as if commenting on the weather. "You don't find warmer things in the whole world than him right now." Jill stared at the blazing behemoth and couldn't help but feel the truth of that. Then her face hardened. This was the tyrant, not a warming blanket. She pushed herself up and planted herself beside the armored stranger. "What do we do now?" she demanded, grit in her voice. "Can you take out that bitch?" Chapter 57, Tracker. Before the mech warrior could answer, a furious roar came from the other side of the street. "Hey, bastard, look over here!" Jill turned toward the sound and saw a rocket streaking toward the tyrant. Someone still had a heavy weapon. Relief flooded her. Finally, something she could understand. The rocket slammed into the massive black figure and detonated on impact. The tyrant's body shuddered in the blaze, and for a moment he looked badly injured. Then a second rocket fired from the end of the street and struck him squarely. The explosions lit up more than half a block. Even a 2.6-meter-tall creature that shrugged off blades and bullets bent under 2 consecutive rockets. He staggered, knelt with crooked knees, and fell to the ground. "Are you two okay?" The man who'd fired the rockets dropped the launcher and sprinted over. He wore the green uniform of the Umbrella UBCS unit. His tight, black-permed hair bobbed as he ran. He looked sharp-eyed and professional. "Finally made it. I'm Carlos. I'm here to get you out." He came up to them. "That monster should be dead. Come with me. I'll take you to the subway station. Our Umbrella emergency unit has set up a shelter there. We're evacuating survivors out of the city." Umbrella, Jill, who had just let herself breathe again, snapped back at him. "Are you fucking kidding me? Raccoon City is in ruins because of you. You expect to protect civilians?" Her voice was full of righteous fury. The T-virus leak from Umbrella's underground lab had caused the outbreak, turning people into monsters. Umbrella had abandoned the city, and worse, used it as a testing ground. The military had surrounded the city, but hadn't sent forces in to clear it out. There had been a political decision. Some official named Simon pushed to delay and nationalize the research, and the result was mass abandonment. Jill's bitterness was raw. Carlos looked bewildered at her anger. "What are you talking about?" he said, taking a step back. "You don't have to believe me, but right now the only way out of the city is by subway. Whether you go's your choice." "Wait, what is that on you?" Only then did Carlos notice the second figure, a man bulky in gleaming steel armor, looking like an unlucky actor from a mech movie caught in a disaster. Jill glanced at him too. "Yes, mech warrior, I was going to ask you." Her question died on her lips as a dull thumping echoed down the street. "Don't mind me. I'm not going the same way as you two." The armored man took a step forward. They watched in the distance as the tyrant who had fallen began moving again. The flames had long since died down. He pushed up with both hands, and the thumping was his weight against the pavement. Carlos muttered, "No way. That thing's still moving after 2 rockets? What is it?" "You've never seen this kind of thing?" Jill asked. "He's hunting something. He won't stop until he finds it. We should go." "This thing's unkillable," Carlos said, panic rising. But the mech warrior laughed. "By your account, is he just a very devoted man?" "Devoted?" The two stared blankly, thrown off by the joke. The armored man ignored them, reached back, unfastened a pack, and threw it aside. Then, with a sputter and a roar, he lifted off. "Holy shit!" Jill and Carlos gaped. Flames burst from his back and feet. This iron suit wasn't just costume, it had a jetpack. Jill's earlier flash of disbelief tightened in her chest. They ducked behind cover and peered out to watch the showdown. He hovered in the air and extended his hands toward the tyrant. Power gathered with a high-tech whine, and then energy beams, like concentrated lightning, lanced from his palms. 2 strips of light struck the tyrant's chest and punched straight through. The huge creature's slow advance halted. Flames flared again across his body, and he thudded to the ground. "Is this it? He won't get up again, right?" Jill asked, stunned. The answer came almost immediately. The tyrant's chest, perforated by the beams, began to split and tear. The black, bulletproof-looking exterior that had survived rockets shattered like brittle armor. His body bulged and expanded grotesquely, tearing open as if something inside was growing. In seconds, the 2.6-meter Titan swelled to 3 times that size, his limbs lengthening into taloned extremities, bony spurs jutting from his back. He collapsed on the pavement, panting. His breath was a grinding, steaming rasp. "This form's ugly," the mech warrior said. "The parasite and the virus in him are out of control. His body's breaking down." This was the tracker tyrant, normally kept coherent by a peculiar parasite. Now the parasite had lost control. Limbs were regenerating and proliferating without restraint. Strength might have increased, but so had the loss of any rational will. "Don't let him transform more. Let's finish this fast," Carlos urged. "If he transforms again, I'll look stupid." The mech warrior dropped his hands, and then small missile caps popped from shoulder, arm, and waist ports. Fire. Dozens of small rockets hurled into the air in a full salvo, tracing arcs toward the malformed tyrant. He sensed danger and launched himself, his powerful legs propelling him into the wall like a mantis to stabilize. He moved to evade, but the missiles were guided. One by one, they adjusted course and chased him down. Jill had never seen him scamper like that, but he couldn't escape. Boom. One missile hit, then another and another. The explosions weren't as loud as the rockets had been, but they struck precise, crippling points. The tyrant stumbled and roared as each warhead found joint or tendon. When the last miniature missile detonated, the creature was reduced to nothing but charred, blackened bone and smoking sinew, slumped lifeless against the wall. "This time, he should be truly dead," the mech warrior said. Jill stared at the ruined body, and then up at the airborne man in the suit, admiration and awe welling up. He was a walking arsenal, impossibly cool. Her training in the military had made her good at explosives, but watching the armored figure in flight, unleashing lasers and guided missiles, she felt like she'd stumbled into a film. The mech warrior glowed in her eyes, powerful, precise, and terrifyingly effective. Chapter 58, Interpretation of Help Information. Leon hovered in the air, staring down at the tyrant on the ground, now reduced to nothing but bones. He could feel it. This time the enemy was truly dead. The vitality of the creature had been astonishingly tenacious. "T-virus," he muttered, "another branch of life's evolution." He let his thoughts drift to the world consciousness's plea for help. The biochemical crisis world had developed powers along a completely different path from his own. Kryptonian's power, for example, is inherent, born of their cells and blood and fueled by the yellow sun. The Resident Evil world, by contrast, amplifies life through biochemical means. According to the game's lore, those means fall into 3 broad categories: viruses, parasites, and fungi. Each has a distinct origin. The most developed of these is virus technology, which has an interesting history. Long ago in Africa bloomed a flower called the Stairway to the Sun. From it sprang a brilliant civilization that later vanished from history. In the 1960s, the 3 founders of Umbrella, Spencer, Marcus, and Edward, rediscovered the plant and extracted from it the progenitor virus. A dozen years later, Marcus combined the progenitor virus with leeches and developed the T-virus. Around that time, Edward's son Alexander established a base in Antarctica, cultivated descendants using his ancestors' genes, and produced the T. veronica virus. Meanwhile, Marcus's student and Spencer's informant, William Birkin, developed a variant in an underground Raccoon City lab, the G virus. These 3 strains form the backbone of the early Resident Evil timeline. Other strains, T-Fear, T-Abyss, C-Virus, and so on, had yet to be developed. Parasites and fungi represented the other evolutionary branches, with far fewer offshoots. The parasite route centered on Plaga, an ancient subterranean parasite discovered centuries ago in the Sierra de Valdelaguna mountains of Spain. Unlike many viruses, Plaga enhances a host while allowing some sanity to remain, which made it attractive to forces wanting to control biological weapons. The fungal path began with a black-surfaced E-mold found in an Eastern European village. The E-mold can store genes, consciousness, and memories of many organisms. When E-mold networks grow large, a giant, infant-shaped mold lord can be born, linking the memories and consciousness stored in the mycelia like a network relay. Smaller pieces of the fungus were called gifts or E-mold. Humans infected with E-mold gained greatly enhanced physicality while retaining wider rationality, but their minds become connected to the Mold Lord, subordinate to higher-ranking infected. Ethan, the protagonist in later entries, and his daughter Rose are examples of people who perfectly integrated with E-Mold, but Rose's birth was still over 20 years in the future. Leon reviewed the Resident Evil world's broad contours in his head and began to see why the world consciousness had asked for help. He recalled the words the consciousness had fed him: gift, salvation, doomsday, evolution, biology, more. Gift clearly referred to the invisible enhancement he had received. Salvation and doomsday seemed literal. The Resident Evil world had faced several apocalyptic crises, though they were overcome in the original timeline. The biggest was probably the crisis involving the C virus in the 6th generation, which threatened to infect the entire globe. The creature called Chaos wasn't especially strong personally, but the virus it carried could spread through the oceans and then the entire world. Of course, that was none of Leon's concern now. With his current capabilities, preventing those crises would be trivial if he acted early. Still, Leon hesitated. If doomsday meant the usual Resident Evil catastrophes, why would the world consciousness be begging him for help? Even if humanity and other creatures were wiped out, the Earth would still orbit the sun. Unless, Leon considered, a narrative structure like some multiverses existed here. A web of events where the deaths or survival of certain key individuals could trigger a chain reaction that ended the world. If that were the case, he could understand the world consciousness's plea, but it felt overly speculative. He set that thought aside and examined the rest. Evolution and biology were straightforward. The world likely wanted him to aid the evolution of life on a global scale. That fit the Resident Evil theme. He'd complained when he'd played the games that everything strange and dangerous seemed to be engineered in Resident Evil, viruses, E-Mold, leaving little room for normal life. If the world itself had become an instinctive consciousness, those phenomena took on new meaning. To promote biological evolution, it would actively cultivate dangerous but highly capable life forms. Viruses, E-Mold, and Plaga could cross-mutate and fuse, producing novel capabilities, perfectly aligned with an evolutionary drive. Perhaps evolution and biology were the core of the world's request. The last term, more, puzzled him. He closed his eyes and reached for the emotional residue the world consciousness had left behind. Slowly, he sensed that the more carried encouragement, anticipation, and a hint of impatience. The world was promising additional rewards once he fulfilled its request. He smirked. Even the world consciousness knows how to dangle carrots, he said softly, tapping the metal of his faceplate. If there's follow-up feedback, I'll need to take this seriously. He still didn't know precisely what the gift he'd received was, but his superbrain gave him a vague intuition that it would be very useful. He laid out a plan. First step, practice saving the world by solving the Raccoon City crisis, he told himself. He switched off the Warframe's thrusters and landed. In the original timeline, there's a T-virus serum in the hospital, he mused. I can use that serum to work toward a broad antidote, and Umbrella's underground lab, Birkin's G-virus, can't be left alone. It's too important to whatever the world is trying to promote. As he considered his next moves, the Warframe's shoulder was tapped. Jill Valentine stepped up on his left, eyes fixed on the arc reactor embedded in the Warframe's chest. You're full of surprises, she said. All that firepower packed into such a compact suit. I haven't introduced myself yet, she added. I'm Jill Valentine, Estarsis. May I ask who you are? Are you some kind of classified military operative? Carlos followed behind her, grinning. Man, you were incredible back there. You took that big guy out in an instant, even after he turned into that whatever that was. Chapter 59, Three-Stage Tyrant, Lion Stark. Lion gave a slight nod as he introduced himself. You two should get out of here. Zombies are swarming, drawn by the noise. Aren't you heading to the subway station? Carlos laughed, tapping the battle armor. Oh, I get it, Brother Stark. You were sent from above to handle this, right? He eyed the suit with a mix of awe and amusement. I had no idea this country's tech could be so advanced. Those guys really hide their toys well. Jill's expression softened. She looked at Lion like she'd found a kindred spirit. She offered her hand. I was Delta Force. Lion, what unit are you with? Lion took her hand with his armored gauntlet. You've got the wrong idea, he said. I'm not from your country. I'm not even from your world. World? Jill frowned. You mean we're not from the same? Literally, I'm from another world. Lion released her hand. I'm not here to clean up Umbrella's mess either. The world consciousness hired me, he added. They asked me to help save your world. Then you two should leave now. Take as many civilians as you can. I might be able to get you some T-virus vaccine later. He turned toward Raccoon City Hospital and prepared to fly. From behind came Carlos's incredulous laugh. Hey, Brother Lion, seriously? Another world? Prove it. The man with the ramen-like hair had a cynical streak. He wasn't the sort to buy tales of salvific heroes. He suspected the armored stranger had seen too much and lost his grip on reality. Jill, too, found the claim far-fetched, though a flicker in her eyes betrayed a different reaction. She'd caught the speed of his movement and felt something stir. Maybe he was joking to cover something. She decided not to press it. Lion ascended, only he hadn't activated the armor's thrusters. He hadn't worn the suit in ages and, preoccupied, had simply used his biofield to lift himself. A several-ton shell hovered in the air while his voice came out muffled, as if speaking from inside a can. I don't need to prove it, Carlos, he said. You don't have to believe me. Just get back to doing what you were. Help as many people as possible. That might save more lives. Also, you two should leave. The zombies are closing in. Jill and Carlos hadn't noticed that the iron battlesuit had already pried open Newton's coffin lid. The lid floated beside the armor, incongruously weightless. They looked around and now saw the truth. Zombies were limping from corners and alleys toward them. We have to go. Jill's face went hard. She didn't forget to ask, what about you? Where are you going? Maybe we can help later. I'm going to Raccoon City Hospital and the police station, Lion said. The police station basement opens into an umbrella lab. If you need serum, look for me there. Jill and Carlos exchanged glances. Plot important characters, perhaps in Lion's estimation. He didn't mind promising assistance. Umbrella's lab? Jill started, but Lion held up a hand. Wait. His ears twitched. Something's crawling nearby. Sounds like horsehair worms. Horsehair worms? Parasites making audible sounds? Jill and Carlos exchanged puzzled looks. Carlos leaned in and whispered, shouldn't we take him with us? He seems off. Something could happen if he's alone. Jill disagreed. Lion seemed remarkably composed. Maybe he just used a code phrase. Special forces all had signals she knew to recognize. It stung a little that neither she nor the Umbrella agent beside her were in Lion's inner circle. There it is. Lion wheeled in the air toward the pile of the tyrant's remains. What had looked like dry bone was now a bulging mass of black goo. From it, countless threads, thinner than a millimeter, spread out over the pavement and slithered toward the approaching zombies. Their movement was silent and inexorable, like water seeping across a street. There really are horsehair worms? Carlos blurted. That was a secret code before? Jill exclaimed. This tyrant is still alive, Lion said. He frowned at the way Jill and Carlos's minds ran off in odd directions. Their priorities weren't quite right. Jill's twitchiness made sense. She'd been through a biochemical leak 2 months ago and still suffered from trauma and insomnia. But the main point now was the same as his. The tyrant hadn't died. Jill and Carlos seemed to come awake. Tyrant? They said then as realization hit. It's still alive! Puff, puff, puff! Sounds of falling suddenly came from all over the street. The approaching zombies collapsed in heaps as the black threads enveloped them, then absorbed them, breaking them down with slick, hungry efficiency. Damn it! It's absorbing other zombies. Stop it! Jill pulled out her pistol and opened fire. Carlos joined in. The bullets sparkled off the black mass, utterly ineffective. Lion watched from above, quiet. He felt something odd. Had the tracker-type tyrant in the game been this resilient? He wasn't sure. He'd always played with cheats that made bosses fall in one shot. Let's see how many forms you can take. Like Frieza, he muttered to himself and crossed his armored arms. The tyrant consumed zombies rapidly. In less than a minute, the pitch-black mass swelled to 8 meters long and 3 meters high, its bloated body like some enormous leech, taking up most of the street and blocking Jill and Carlos's only escape route. What the hell is that thing? Jill ground out. Lion, do you have anything? At that moment, Lion's voice came calmly from above, laced with a confidence that made Jill feel suddenly steadied. She thought of generals she had seen in training, of that unshakable calm, the poise of command. Maybe Lion truly was a high-ranking officer. She spun around with a cluster of questions, and what she saw next was a sight she would never forget. Jarvis, disengage the battlesuit. Jill heard Leon's voice from inside the mech. Yes, young master. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating when a second voice answered. Then the mech's thrusters spat flame and iron plates peeled back, revealing the man inside. Her mind had gone numb the instant the thrusters fired. Up until now, the suit had floated as if weightless, no visible propulsion at all. It had been like a ghost. A cold spike ran down her spine. Then shock replaced the chill. The faceplate snapped open. Leon's face looked carved, a high nose, heavy brows, deep-set eyes, hair falling loose in defined strands. He had the easy languor of a sunlit afternoon. Jill's first thought was some Greek statue come to life. Then she saw his clothes, a rock-gray knitted sweater, khaki cargo shorts that exposed half his calves, and battered brown hiking shoes. He didn't look like a battle-hardened soldier so much as a student on his way to buy breakfast. If that had been all, Jill might have filed him under handsome but unreliable. But then the impossible happened. Leon rose into the air. Both she and Carlos gaped. He floated up, suddenly sharp, crimson light flaring in dark pupils. The mech folded itself closed and hovered nearby, still belching flame. I tried to get along with you as an ordinary person, he called, arms crossed, hovering with the casual arrogance of someone who owned the sky. But this tyrant keeps coming back. Now I'll lay my cards on the table. The battlesuit is just my seal. Below him, the giant leech-formed tyrant, now 10 meters across, burst outward, ejecting dozens of thick, writhing tentacles. They sliced through buildings and multiplied like a living tide, draping the city in black biological tissue. The tyrant's original upper body sat at the center, grotesquely regigantified like a small building. It had no feet, only nearly 10-meter-long talons, and its head had become a leech's maw, lined with sharp teeth. It had entered its third phase. Having been killed twice already, all its animus was focused on Leon. The creature craned its long neck and issued a roar that split the sky. A gale thundered out of its mouth, buffeting the street and making cars rock. Leon's lips thinned. He didn't intend to inhale whatever foul breath the tyrant exhaled. In an instant, his figure blurred and reappeared beneath the beast. "Shut up!" he shouted, and broke the sound barrier as he drove an upward punch into the tyrant's head. The blow looked effortless, but the head, newly regenerated, didn't survive the impact. It exploded into a hail of fragments like a burst balloon. Leon's biofield flared, coupling force across the creature's entire mass. With that single collision, the tyrant's body and the buildings clutched in its tentacles were torn from the ground and hurled skyward. Chunks of black tissue, whole sections of high-rise, even chunks of road broke the sound barrier and shot into the air. Leon didn't stop. He chased the mass and struck again. The second impact detonated like a meteor, pulverizing the tyrant. The zombies tangled in its limbs and the surrounding architecture into a spray of debris. Jill and Carlos felt the world lurch out from under them as if someone had cut a seam in reality. They hadn't even blinked, yet everything within a dozen meters had been ripped away and flung upward. When the dust settled, the neighborhood was a raw, parched expanse. Asphalt and concrete were stripped away, revealing yawning, dark sewers below. The city they had known seemed to have been erased. For a breathless moment, Jill could only stare. Leon had dwindled to a tiny dot high above them. Then, without a sound, that small dot was right in front of them again. "My apologies," he said, smiling a little as if he were only mildly embarrassed. "The tyrant's body was biologically fascinating, so I might have used a bit too much force." He waved. "There was some damage to the city, but the residents here are zombies anyway. It doesn't matter." He turned to them. "Let's part ways here. Goodbye, Jill. Carlos, remember to gather the civilians." "Where are you going?" Carlos blurted. "Raccoon City Hospital," Leon answered, beckoning toward the idle mech. "Jarvis, come on." "Young Master Leon, shall I prepare the battle suit?" Jarvis asked. Leon shook his head. "Why wear it?" "I only used it before because of Kryptonite and Red Sun. There's nothing in this world that can harm me." "Very well, young master. Also, grab the bag Tony gave me. We're moving." Before they could respond, he was gone. With his speed, he could accelerate to hundreds of Mach in an instant, and his biofield made the noise of that speed softer than wind. Jill and Carlos hadn't fully processed his last words before only a faint wind and a scatter of yellow dust marked where he'd stood. "He just left like that?" Carlos said, dumbfounded. "Yeah," Jill said, voice flat. "He really is a savior." "I don't know. Probably. Didn't he say he was going to the police department?" Carlos frowned, trying to recall. "I thought he said hospital." Jill started, uncertain. "So what do we do now? Go to the subway station?" Carlos rubbed his jaw. "Go," Jill said, suddenly determined. "Leon told us to rescue civilians. I'm going to the subway to keep an eye on you umbrella people." The image of Leon in cargo shorts, calm and possibly powerful, kept replaying in her mind. Everything else had gone strangely small by comparison. As they spoke, the debris from the destruction settled around them like a thin, gray rain.